All right, everybody, welcome back here on the A to Z Sports Film Room channel. It is finally draft day. It has been an insanely long NFL draft cycle, and I am so glad that we've finally gotten to this point. We are going to be live for 2 hours today as we do on these mailbag shows. Hit the like button and drop a comment in the chat. We are only taking questions from the chat today. We have some rumors that we are going to try and make sense of at the start of today's show, but the only questions we are answering are coming on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, hop on over to the A to Z Sports Film Room channel and send us your questions. And again, reminding you, if you're tuned in, hit the like button. It helps us out, helps us get more people tapped in and viewing the live stream. Ryan, how are you feeling today? I feel like this has been one of the weirdest draft cycles because there's so many variances of opinions on guys. There is really not a lot of chalk like we usually get. I feel like we kind of have a sense of what players certain teams are looking for, but anything can happen today, including trades, which we have had none up until this point.
It's how am I doing? I'm doing pretty well, other than my kids deciding to get the stomach virus on draft week. I don't know. I don't know what gave them the right to think that they could come into this world and then ruin and threaten draft week. It's not a fun time at home. But I'm doing great, man. It has been a very strange draft process. I feel like these processes get a little bit shorter as you cover it a little bit more, but this one did seem to drag a little bit at times. Interested to see kind of some of the chaos. I mean, you mentioned the chalk. I feel pretty good about like the top 7 picks as far as like I feel pretty good about predicting those. But once the Carolina Panthers come on the clock at number 8, it's like chaos.
What's going to happen?
Like I've heard so many different things for Carolina. I really think they could just set off a little bit of a tidal wave of just chaos in this draft. So interested to see, man. But I'm excited to talk about all these rumors and recent just kind of buzz, and obviously answering a lot of listener questions. So excited for this one for sure.
Again, folks, if you're tuned in on YouTube and you have a 2025 NFL draft question, you're trying to make sense of a rumor that you saw from a legitimate source, from a person with a random Russell Westbrook avatar on Twitter, whatever it is. If you're just trying to make sense of it, comment it in the chat, and we will get to as many questions as we can in the next 2 hours. Long show today. I know that we had 5 rumors listed here, Ryan, but I want to start actually with what you just brought up with the Carolina Panthers being a catalyst for chaos potentially.
Yes.
And I think one of the reasons why they could be a catalyst for chaos is not just the fact that they could take the second edge rusher off the board. They could take Jalen Walker, which has been a predicted and also highly desired pick by Carolina Panthers fans. They could end up taking Shamar Stewart, who's a completely different style of edge rusher. They could take Mason Graham. They could end up drafting Tyrell McMillan earlier than everybody expects because they need receivers. But most importantly,
Tyler
Warren's another one that's really random. But the most important thing I was just going to throw out there before I let you jump in here, they could be one of the biggest trade back guys. They are teams rather. They could be one of the biggest trade back teams to move back and somebody jump up to grab a lineman, to grab, as you're talking about Tyler Warren here, there's just so many things that the Panthers have control over for what's going to happen in the first round.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a big trade up for quarterback year. I think the trade ups that can potentially happen in this class for me is one, elite prospects. So if there's a Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are not going to fall, but like let's say a Mason Graham, or if you think Tyler Warren is an elite prospect and he starts to fall, like those teams could kind of cause a trade up to potentially happen and those teams to trade back. But also I think the other big thing, Joe, and this is one of the rumors that I definitely want to hit on today, is there's an offensive line run that could happen very early on in this class. And if an offensive line run does happen, there are some teams in like the middle back end of the first round that have some serious offensive line needs, man. So does that cause a team to mortgage a lot of draft capital to go up and make sure that they don't miss out on the offensive line run? There's a lot of things that could happen, but Carolina is a bizarre team to because like you mentioned, they have a lot of needs, but you feel like they have to go defense, kind of. But then again, if a Tyler Warren's on the table, or if they like a Tedero McMillan, or they like another wide receiver, whatever, is that a spot that they'd be comfortable taking one? I mean, that's a do you know who the starting tight end is right now for the Carolina Panthers? Do you know this?
Isn't it Tommy Tremble?
It's Tommy Tremble, man. Yeah. So I mean, a tight end has to be on the table. Tommy Tremble's not a very good football player, but so
That's a
it's
really
going to be
interesting
interesting.
point, though. Yeah, it's a really interesting point though, because like Tyler Warren is a player that hasn't been brought up once, I feel like, with the Panthers. So like, and the one that I've kind of laughed at, and it's not going to happen. We're going to get to a rumor specific to this. I've kind of laughed at Panthers fans wanting Ashton Genty. I've never really understood that one, because it's like you've
Who?
invested
Wait,
all
say
this
that
money.
again? Who?
The Panthers wanting Ashton Genty. Panthers
Yeah.
fans wanting, some have brought up wanting Ashton Genty, and it's like, you just drafted Jonathan Brooks as the first running back selected last year. You have money committed to multiple guys for multiple years. It's one of the most expensive, unnecessarily expensive running back rooms. Why would you, after all of that, go and draft another running back? But yeah, offensive weapon is on the, they're the one team, again, I'm just like kind of rounding out this thought. They're the one team that could take almost like any position except for quarterback.
It's like they're almost like the wide scale version of the Cincinnati Bengals and mocking for them, because the Bengals are just going to take a defensive player, but you have no idea which one it's going to be, but it's going to be a good pick because their defense is so bad, right? And the Panthers actually showed a lot of signs down the stretch. Like Bryce Young played better, the team played hard. Like it looks like it's at least heading in an okay direction, but I mean they're a roster that is depleted of talent right now. Like they need to reload that roster and rebuild that roster in a lot of different ways. So yeah, Tyler Warren at 8, defensive player at 8. There's a lot of ways they could go, and it wouldn't necessarily be a bad decision.
You brought up the offensive line run that's potentially going to happen, and I think that there's two dominoes that are going to cause this run to happen. Will Campbell potentially being the pick for the Patriots. Will Campbell, by the way, is such a Mike Vrabel pick. Not the highest upside lineman, but the highest floor. Just sounds like he's played in the NFL for 10 years when you listen to him talk, because he's so detail oriented, and he also just sounds like an old man the way that he talks. He feels like a Vrabel pick. Armand Membu is in the mix. And then one of the most surprising late moves is finding out that Kelvin Banks is potentially going to go in the top 10. And I feel very vindicated about this, because not only was he for a very long period of time my top offensive lineman, I've kind of cooled on him just a tiny bit, but I also said that the explosiveness that he presents, that he tested with, he had won some of the best jumps at the NFL Combine, is something that's going to catch the NFL's attention. And I think that applies here. So that is where this run starts to begin of, if those three guys go in the first 12 picks, it is going to maybe create a little bit of a panic in a year where there's not really a lot of good offensive line options.
I think the Banks thing is super interesting, because what have we talked a lot about, Joe? It's the fact that some left tackle prospects could get buoyed and kind of pushed up the board a little bit. Because there's not a lot of true blindside protectors in this class. This is why I've been like so adamant on my love for Josh Simmons, is the fact that he's one of the very few guys that I think is a left tackle. Like he's a left tackle. He could play the blind side. You're good. Kelvin Banks is a player that obviously could play right tackle. He could play guard if you wanted him to as well. But he has a profile that I think teams will be comfortable projecting to stick at offensive tackle on the next level, right? Like he's got right around 34-inch arms. He's a good athlete. And he's played a lot, right? Like he's a 3-year starter at Texas as well. So he's played a lot of football. So I just think teams are going to be more comfortable. Yeah, I think they're just going to be more comfortable. Like, because I think Will Campbell will probably be the first offensive lineman off the board. But even comparing him to a Will Campbell is a player that I think some people are going to view as an interior player, are going to view as a guard, and have done that because of the lack of arm length. When you talk about Kelvin Banks, he might not be like the most exciting athlete of all time, just overall, but he does check a lot of boxes where you say, I think his combination of length, athleticism, experience can last at offensive tackle, which is why I think he's going to be a top 10 pick tonight. I think he's going to end up in the top 10.
I think especially in like a draft class where there's like not like a lot of great answers at offensive line, you automatically, NFL teams are going to lean into, hey, this guy's played a lot. This guy has a lot of experience, and he has the tools for us to continue to develop him and for him to improve to be a really good starting offensive lineman for us. We're getting a lot of people that are throwing in some comments and some questions. We're going to get to them very shortly. Folks, if you were just joining us, hit the like button. We only have 8 likes, but we've got over 20 people that are slowly starting to trickle their way in. Please hit that like button to help us get more people to tap into the stream. And also, please comment your thoughts, questions, whatever it is about the 2025 NFL Draft happening tonight. Let us know, and we are going to try and address and answer as many questions as possible. Beefeater, we're going to get to your question in a second, but this one caught my attention because it goes in line with one of the rumors that you put in your article this morning about like, here's what you're hearing, things that can happen. Doob, but his great name, Doob 6787 with the injury concerns for Jihad Campbell. Do you see the Buccaneers moving back and grabbing someone like Hairston or Starks, or do they stick and pick best defensive player available? I tweeted this out. Maxwell Hairston is going to go a lot earlier than people realize. What are your thoughts on Hairston maybe being that pick for the Bucs?
So a lot's in there. I mean, just hit on the Campbell stuff for a second. I think there is a possibility that Campbell is going to slide. I pushed back on it early, but just kind of the more we've deep dived into the background of the injuries, it's not just the shoulders that's a little bit of the concern. There's also a knee issue that's out there with a Jihad Campbell. So I know he's been medical red flagged by a couple different teams at this point, so a fall could definitely happen. Hairston is a guy that I think the Buccaneers are going to have a lot of interest in, and I haven't been shy about saying that. I said that in the article, to your point, Joe. I just, for the sake of this question, whether they would trade back versus stick and pick at 19, here's I guess an opinion. I think they'd be comfortable drafting one of those two at 19. Like, I think they would be comfortable drafting Maxwell Hairston at 19. I think they might be comfortable drafting a Malachi Starks at 19 potentially. So I don't think that you have to trade back to take one of those. I think they would be overly comfortable to draft at 19. Now, that being said, Maxwell Hairston, I think he'll probably be there at 19, like most likely. But Joe, I will say this: there's a possibility he's off the board before that. There is, man, because there's love for Maxwell Hairston out there. There is the 4.28 40, the experience in the SEC, the ball skills he has. Obviously, he was a little bit more banged up this year, but we saw in like 2023 when he's fully healthy, he forces a whole lot of turnovers. So Maxwell Hairston as a top 20 pick, I think, is pretty likely at this point.
I also I think the biggest market for Maxwell Hairston to go earlier than people were expecting. One, the 40 time that he ran, tremendously fast. We knew that he was fast, but like he really puts into context, like, oh my God, this guy could fly. The injury stuff with all of these other players in the back end that were in the conversation for Jihad Campbell, who we just brought up, for Will Johnson. But this was something, and I brought this tidbit up multiple times. I don't know if you were standing there when we were having this conversation, but we were having a conversation with somebody who kind of provided the context for Hairston after he ran the really good 40 time. Some people were concerned, including myself, was that when you watched his last few games after he missed that chunk of time during the middle of the season, and there wasn't really a lot of clarity on like why he was missing time, he looked really thin. He looked really frail. And he also looked just like not strong enough to tackle. It was all over his film. And the context that was provided, it makes you go, oh, okay, all right. Well, this is something that's going to clear things up, and NFL teams are going to realize, oh, we just need to be diligent about making sure that he continues to add weight. He apparently had an injury and then an infection that kept him in the hospital, and he lost a bunch of weight. So he was playing a lot lower than most cornerbacks would typically play. So his playing weight that we saw at the end of the year is something that we should all take with a very clear grain of salt.
Yeah, well, I think it was telling, and it was good to see, because he was like in the 170s. Wasn't he like 178, 179 at the pro day at the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he like 178, 179? But then he went to the pro and went to the combine. And he was like more in the mid 180s range, and he still ran 4.28, right? So like that tells you that he can play with that added weight to him. And even if he adds some weight and drops a little bit of speed overall, I mean, he's still exceptionally fast for the NFL level. So the weight I'm not overly concerned about. I also will say this though, Joe, his play strength is just average, like it's solid, right? So like if you're drafting him to be a boundary corner that's going to be heavily involved in the run game, like I don't think that you're going to love Maxwell Hairston. Like he is a field corner that has incredible explosiveness, great hit flexibility, a guy that can really turn around with just about anybody and can plant and go in off coverage as well. So just you need to know what you're getting in him, right? Like ultimately, like he's not going to be a tackler like a Jahdae Barron. Like he's just not going to be that type of player, but he is a very unique coverage player that provides a lot of upside.
He also really, I think that like knowing the Buccaneers and like looking at their draft strategy under Jason Light, that's the correct pronunciation, right? It's not Licht, it's Light.
It's light. Yep, you're right.
That's what I thought. a lot of times he has gone with some physical outliers to prioritize athleticism. Elijah Cansey is like the clearest example of that. So that's like that to me is where the alarm bells go off. Like, oh, Maxwell Hairston with the Buccaneers, that pick makes a lot of sense, and that's why Jahad Campbell for a long time, that pick made a lot of sense. But now the potential for him to slide because of the injury concerns comes into play.
Yeah,
we've got a lot of awesome questions.
We'll have to have a video after the fact if Harrison is a Buck or somebody else is a Buck and it's not Jahad Campbell. We'll have to do a video later about how all this stuff kind of unfolded a little bit, because it did for a while. I did think that Jahad Campbell was probably gonna be the pick at 19, but unfortunately the injuries and just some other components have kind of led to that probably not being a match that's going to work or make sense.
The audience is starting to build, guys. Very grateful for everyone who took the time to hop in today. We are going to be alive and not alive. We are going to be.
Well, we are going to be alive as well.
I hope I'm going to be alive after today, after the Giants take Jackson Dart. We will be live until 1 p.m. today. We might even go a little bit longer if the conversation is. How busy are you today, Ryan? Am I going to be holding you if we go past one?
No, man. No. I'm a man of the people, so I will go as long as I need to.
Of course. Yes. Hit the like button if you're just joining us. If you've sent the comment and you haven't hit the like button, hit that dang like button. Otherwise, well, we're not going to answer your question, even though I can't tell if you did or not. Also, I could just tell off of vibes. And then also, if you are joining us and you have a thought or a question about the 2025 NFL Draft, send it on over and we will get to it. The very quick one I want to get to from IGK, who is a fantastic recurring viewer and listener of the stream. Oh, yeah. He said, you guys got a live stream tonight. So sadly, we're not live streaming, having done it a couple of times in the past. We want to prioritize being able to give quality short form analysis for a lot of the key picks. So that is where a lot of the analysis is going to be coming from folks. Somebody, Evan Creighton, threw in here, I'm looking forward to your individual prospect breakdown videos. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about fit. We're going to give a grade for the players. The expectation of like, hey, this is what this means for this team. And after the fact, after the draft is over, we'll also have a little bit more longer form full draft class videos that'll be coming your way for the next few weeks. Let's get back on track, though, to some of these good questions that we have. The first one that we had from Beefeater, who was really early on in the comments, said, happy draft day, gents. Question, should the Raiders trade Michael Mayer for an additional pick? And what do you think they could get for him? Maybe trade with New England for one of their third-round picks. Mm-hmm. I think that a third is going to be a little generous to trade Michael Mayer. I think it would be realistically probably fourth or fifth, pick, just because he hasn't been very productive. But does he not feel like a New England Patriot? I feel like that Mayer would be a really nice fit for them. Yeah.
I could say it. I mean, I think that it would be a smart move by New England just overall or just smart move for the Raiders, I should say, because I think, Michael Mayer showed a lot of signs 2 years ago as a rookie. Like there were a lot of flashes, and this past year, obviously, dealing with what he was dealing with and Brock Bowers' ascension and everything. He's a great tight end too, but I do think that he has some value that you could parlay for the team. So a fourth or fifth rounder sounds about a solid pick for me, because he showed flashes as a rookie and he was a second round pick, right? So, and an early second round pick at that. So I do think he still has some value, and he's still super young. I think the one thing we forget about Michael Mayer was that he's a true junior coming out of Notre Dame. So it wasn't like he was like this 23-year-old rookie. Like he was a 21-year-old rookie. So he's still very young, still very talented. And I hope that he finds a spot that makes sense for him, because I still think there's a lot of underlying talent and upside there.
He could be one of those guys that gets traded and then out of nowhere he just starts to build steam and into becoming a quality starter. I don't know if he'll ever become a top 5 tight end like I hoped he would be, but if he's one of the better starting tight ends in the NFL, I could totally see it. Talk about a guy, by the way, but I don't want to spend too much time on Mayer here because he's not a 2025 draft prospect, but like that dude had some of the worst early career luck. He goes early in the second round to a Raiders team that has just an awful quarterback room, has a head coach who gets fired. Then there's the interim stuff, and then Antonio Pierce takes over, and the interim tag gets taken off of him. And then they have even worse quarterback performances the next year. And on top of this, they ended up taking Brock Bowers because he fell into their lap. I don't think that the Raiders even thought that Bowers was going to be available for them at 13. It was one of those picks where it's like, yeah, we don't really need Brock Bowers, but we would be incredibly stupid not to take him. So he just got the short end of it. I don't think that it means anything about Mayer being unable to eventually become a really good player in the NFL. It just needs a little bit more time.
Brock Bowers was one of those picks where, I mean, I had him graded as my number 1 overall player in that class, right? So it was just like, and obviously he was a tight end, so he wasn't going to go number 1 overall, but he was just too good to pass up. I mean, he just was. I mean, there was a lot of people that wanted to trade up to get a Brock Bowers. I mean, the Rams were a team that people kind of talked a lot about last year. So yes, I don't think that says really anything about Mayer. Mayer now missed obviously some time, just dealing with his personal issues and everything. He came back eventually, but I think there's a lot of talent still there, Joe. I do. I mean, I always think, can you imagine, because obviously the Lions drafted Sam Laporta right before Michael Mayer, and Laporta was great as a rookie, but he was just kind of solid to good in his second year. He wasn't great this past year for the Lions, though. Can you imagine if they would have drafted Mayer instead of Laporta? How much different his career might be right now if that would have been a thing. That's why fit matters so much. I remember talking about this, and it wasn't that Mayer went in the second round and he fell a little bit. It was that the Raiders drafted him, right? Where I was like, oh man, that's not good. I don't like that at all. Like I just don't like that fit for him. I just don't think that's proper. And who would have thought that Antonio Pierce would not have worked out? I say so sarcastically. Like that was like the worst interim hire I've ever seen. So yeah.
So Elks, who is a Rufino and Joe Show listener, always has great comments and always likes to give me a hard time because I am so negative about Ohio State, according to him. But he is asking, in line with Mayer, we're going to get to some of these other questions that are more towards the top, but this one caught my attention just to stay on this topic. Speaking of Mayer, should the Colts draft the tight end or trade for Mayer?
Tyler Warren, baby. Tyler Warren, no matter what. Put him on a sticky note, trade up for him, do whatever you got to do. Tyler Warren, no matter what.
I think that they're probably going to be a tight end in the first round team. If they don't, though, I don't hate the idea of trading for Michael Mayer. He is an option, though, certainly for teams. And I think a player that hasn't even really been discussed as a possible trade candidate during the draft this year.
So let me ask you a question here. And
okay.
I'll circle back to Mayer to Indy in a second. If Colston Love, if Tyler Warren goes 7 to the Jets and Colston Loveland's there at 14, would you take Colston Loveland at 14?
Wait, say that one more time. Sorry.
If Tyler Warren is drafted by the Jets at 7 and Colston Loveland is there at 14, would you be okay with taking Colston Loveland at 14?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was listening to today, I was listening to the Athletic NFL show, and they do really good stuff. And Brugler was on there, and they were talking about how Loveland is probably more of a Chris Ballard type of a pick at tight end than Tyler Warren is. So yeah, I think that when you've got this big arm quarterback who wants to attack downfield, why not give him somebody who's really fast who can stretch the field? Sure.
So in that vein, Mayer probably wouldn't be a great fit with the.
That's a good point.
Right? I mean, I'm just kind of think because Michael Mayer is much more a possession, physical catch points type of tight end, right? Like that's kind of where he does his most. I think he's underrated after the catch. At least he was coming out of Notre Dame, but like he's more of your big body before the catch to the catch kind of guy. He's not a guy that's going to create a ton after the catch overall. So very interesting. But so I love this topic. If you're the Colts, would you be aggressive and trade up for a Tyler Warren? I love this topic. I think this is so interesting.
Really good.
Because you don't usually trade up for tight ends, right? I mean, we talked about doing it for Brock Bowers last year, but Brock Bowers was also the best tight end I've ever evaluated, right? So like that's a little bit different. Tyler Warren is a great prospect, one of the better tight ends I've ever graded, but he's not Brock Bowers, right? So like, would you trade up into the top 10 to try to snag a Tyler Warren, or is that too rich? I mean, like that's a very interesting conversation.
I am against, especially in this draft class. First of all, I think Tyler Warren's a great prospect. I don't think Tyler Warren is a trade up into the top 10 prospect. I don't. I think that would be a mistake. I think overall, trading up for a tight end or a running back they're not positions that you should trade up for. A safety as well. I don't like the idea of
What
trading
would
up
you
for
have
a
traded up
safety.
for Brock Bowers last year? Would you have traded up for Brock Bowers last year?
But Tyler Warren's not Brock Bowers.
Well, that's my point. That's my point, right? Like, there's a difference. I get the positional thing you're coming at, right? Like, there's some positions that maybe you're less likely to trade up for, but also like there are exceptions to that rule, right? Like, there's
But
always
that's
exceptions.
that's my point is that even Ashton-Genti, as good as Ashton-Genti is, they're great prospects. They are great players, but they don't fit into the exception category. I think that there are only two players that fit into the exception category this year. That is Abdul Carter and that is Travis Hunter. And there's probably not even going to be a trade up for either of those prospects because the Giants and the Browns are probably just going to pick them. Yeah, that feels locked in. Unless somebody trades up and swaps with the Giants, which was a rumor at the beginning of the week of like, hey, maybe somebody desperately needs to go up and go and get him. But outside of that, I don't think anyone else fits the exception. I think every other prospect, especially the ones that we've talked about in the top 15, are all your typical good players. So no, I don't. If I'm the Colts, to answer that question more directly, I would not trade up for Tyler Warren, especially when you're in this position where Ballard might be on his last leg here. He's done some great things with the Colts, but they haven't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't done anything to give himself grace. If Anthony Richardson sucks this year and you give up draft capital,
which is most likely. Yeah.
Okay. But if you give up draft capital when you need to round out the roster more, I don't think that Tyler Warren takes you over the top. I don't think it solves your problems.
I love this topic of trades. We probably should have done a show on this, and we didn't because a little misguided, I guess. I don't know. I blame the producer of the show, I guess.
We didn't do something like that.
It's a joke.
The problem with doing a video on trades, Ryan, is because the minute that we record it, the minute that it could immediately become dated. We could post it, and then an hour later, it could have been dated. So that was why we didn't do it.
I understand that. I will say I'm interested with trades this year because there's a possibility someone trades up for a quarterback, more than likely in the back end of the first round than like the front end of the first round. But Joe, like, there's people that are talking about a lot of trade movement. I've seen multiple people that have connections in the NFL that are talking about like, hey, I think there's going to be a lot of trades in this first round. I just don't buy
the fact that we've made it this far and there's been no trades. We always have to like remind ourselves that whenever there is some headline on the day of the draft, the week of the draft, it's not always the information that's in front of you. It is a lot of times that like, okay, we need to read through this. The read through on this is teams that want to trade out of their picks are trying to create motivation for people to trade up.
Sure.
So they're just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks. Hopefully that somebody is like, oh man, if there's going to be all these trades, we need to go up and get our guy.
You mean like Jackson Dart being really good? Is that one that people keep planting a little bit?
Don't do this to me.
The face. Oh,
Ryan,
God.
I'm telling you right now, if the New York Giants draft Jackson Dart, we are screwed. We're screwed. I'm in the first round. If he's in the second round, I could kind of like be fine with it. But as a first round pick, the direction of the Giants it's cooked. It's completely cooked. But that is going to be a reaction for after the pick ones.
I'm not even saying it to hurt you, Joe. I'm really not, because I do playfully say some things to just kind of jab at you at times because we're friends.
Often.
But often, yes. I actually do think that there's a possibility that the Giants trade back into the back end of the first round to draft Jackson Dart. I just think it could happen. I really do. I'm actually not buying the Saints as much. I think the Giants are the team that is kind of a weird one to me. I don't know, because honestly. No, I'm not going to go too far with this. I just think that it's possible. I just think it's possible.
I'm going to be beside myself if that is the next quarterback for the Giants. After we suffered
I hope it's not. But
5 or whatever, how long years, Daniel Jones, of not being good enough after we figured that out after the second year, we're going to start this process over again with a guy who's below average, and we're going to get Kenny Pickett.
He might be better than Daniel Jones, though. Maybe he might be better than Daniel Jones.
At least Daniel Jones had tools. At least he had traits. At least he had
run.
size.
Dart's athletic.
He can't run like Daniel Jones could.
I mean, Daniel Jones also tripped over his own feet. So how athletic was he?
I'd rather have the long speed. I mean, he was one of the fastest players in the NFL on some of his long runs.
Yes, I know. Until the sniper got him and he fell over his own feet
Okay.
70 yards down the field. Yes, I remember.
Let's move on to another one of these questions. So, next question we've got from IGK: is there any shot the Bengals reach for a Notre Dame defensive player? This is something that you and I were talking about this morning. It feels like that there's a chance that Xavier Watts could end up being a Cincinnati Bengal some point in the first couple rounds.
Yeah. By the way, can we pull up these questions that are coming in from
I
Twitter?
can't.
By the way,
you can't. On Twitter, I can.
Yes,
do you want me to?
They're in the chat. Oh no, I'm just saying that I see like
I can do the. I can do
Okay.
the Twitter ones. I can't do the
Got it.
YouTube ones
Got it,
because
got it.
of the weird
Understood.
setup that we have going on.
I think it's highly likely, IGK, that the Cincinnati Bengals draft at least one Notre Dame defender, at least one, because some of their biggest needs are at positions where Notre Dame is strongest in this draft. And that is obviously like they need a corner, they need a safety, Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts. They also need linebacker play. Obviously, you know, they've been offloading linebackers, Jermaine Pratt and all that type of stuff, right? So Jack Kaiser in like the middle rounds makes a lot of sense. I think that Xavier Watts or Jack Kaiser in the middle rounds makes so much sense for this team, Joe, because building up the middle, those guys in the middle are the players that you usually look at with the green dot of like where to get guys lined up, help implement the system, like those types of things. I think Xavier Watts is the perfect player for the Bengals. Now, I don't know if they would draft him at 17. I think that's early, to be honest with you, but there's at least some conversations about it, right? But I do think as a trade back to the back end of the first round or potentially early in the seconds, if they want to maneuver a couple different ways, I think that Xavier Watts would be a very interesting pick for the Cincinnati Bengals because I think you want a guy in the middle of the field that understands what the expectation is. And then obviously defensive backs are really important in Coach Golden defense also. So I think that all those things together, I think at least one Cincinnati Bengal will get drafted. And I wouldn't be shocked if like a Jordan Clark is a Cincinnati Bengal after the draft or someone like that. You know what I mean? So I think that I love Xavier Watson Cincy. I think it makes so much sense.
You and I was saying this to you when we were having this conversation earlier too. The grade for Michael Williams, who is a projected player often for the Bengals, James Pierce, early second round, maybe is what James Pierce is probably higher, but like Michael Williams is probably for most teams is going to be like an early second round pick. Xavier Watts, probably a mid to late second round pick, third round pick grade. When there's not that much of a variance in the grades, which is very rare, and that's kind of what we have this year, knowing that Al Golden's defense was so successful because of the safety play that it had over the past couple of years, and specifically Xavier Watts turning into a college star, one of the best DBs in the country with the interception production that he was able to have. That stuff to me is enough of an indicator that maybe they would consider doing it in the first round. If not, maybe trading up at the beginning of the second round. Any team that is going to go after Notre Dame players, it's going to be the Bengals. And like I also like Riley Mills. If Riley Mills ended up being a pick for them on day 3, that also makes a crap load of sense because they need some big bodies in the middle. They need some space eaters that have a little bit
of Howard Cross later in the draft is like a situational rotational defensive tackle. I mean, like, yeah, I think they make a lot of sense, man. I think it really does.
By the way, if you're tuning in, please hit that like button if you haven't done so already, and then drop a comment for the your thoughts on the 2025 NFL draft. I want to get to really quickly one of these Twitter questions that you just brought up. Were you talking about the ones that Justin threw in here?
Yes. Yeah. Good friend of the show.
Good friend of the show of A to Z Sports. Justin Churchill asks, knowing what we know about the history of the quarterback position for the Raiders, could you see Las Vegas drafting Shedeur Sanders? What do you think about that?
I can't see it just because for better or for worse, I think that we know what the quarterback situation is in Las Vegas for the short-term future. And I'm not buying that they're going to double dip and draft a guy in the top 10 and have the veteran combined with the rookie. And teams have done it. So like, it's a great question, Justin, because teams have definitely done this in the past, but I just think the Raiders looked for stability. at the quarterback position with the veteran quarterback route, obviously this offseason. And I think from there, it's going to be about building up the best of this roster. Like, I think offensive tackle is going to be the big play potentially with the Raiders with that first round selection. Or if not, maybe if Ashton Genty is there, right, to solidify that running back room. I think that the quarterback, they're settled for now. Maybe it's a day 2 conversation they have, but I can't see them taking Shedeur in the top 10 personally. I think that they are a team that is going to draft who they deem to either be the best player available or they take the best offensive tackle available. I think they are a Kelvin Banks spots. They are a Armin Membu spots. Like they're one of those guys. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Right. They're a team that I think that drafting an offensive lineman makes a lot of sense for them, especially if Ashton Genty ends up being off the board where they're picking at 6. They need to round out their offensive line a little bit more, and then maybe round 2 is when they end up picking a running back. If Marion Hampton's still there, if Trevion Henderson is there for Chip Kelly to work with again. I think that generally the fact that Pete Carroll is so much older than the typical NFL head coach,
right?
The fact that Geno Smith is also older than the typical starting quarterback that you trade for and sign to a multi-year extension, all of those things, it seems like they're trying to be competitive right now, which I don't know if that's smart for long-term success, but if that's what the goal is, you're not spending a first rounder on a quarterback.
Well, and the Rook 10 literally in the chat mentioned the Pete Carroll contract / age conversation, which you're alluding to as well. This is not a long runway situation, right? Like Pete Carroll is not going to be here 5 to 6 years from now as the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. He's trying to do a quick turnaround, right? And I don't think that a quick turnaround says to me, I'm going to pay a veteran quarterback a lot of money and then also draft a quarterback who's probably going to be a year 1 stash and then hopefully a year 2 starter potentially and try to get out of the contract. I just don't think that makes any sense for the runway Pete Carroll has. Like, he's in his 70s. He's not going to be there a ton of time. He's trying to turn this thing around and win now. Like, that is the ideology, I think. So I don't think it would make any sense in this situation.
Yeah, the way that they have kind of laid out this groundwork for how they're approaching things, it seems pretty clear that the goal is, hey, we need to be competitive at the current moment. Right. I think that they're a team that needs to get some receivers. I think that they're a team that needs to round out the offensive line. Their secondary definitely needs help, and this is a draft class for them to improve their defense as well. So drafting Shedeur Sanders in the first round, when you have one of the early few picks to be able to make the selection of a lot of different options, it would be really missing out on an opportunity to take advantage of that.
Can Shedeur play running back or offensive tackle or corner? If so, maybe we consider it. I don't know.
No. Why is Beefeater asking us questions on YouTube and on Twitter?
He's a supporter, man. Shout out to Beefeater. Shout out.
If you were all right, this is the last Twitter question we're getting to for a while because we've got a lot of YouTube questions. If you were made the GM of the Giants, would you asking if I would hire Blake Ruffino? No, I would not hire Blake Ruffino to. I didn't read the question until I started reading it out loud. No, I would not hire Blake Ruffino. I would not hire Blake Ruffino because he would argue too much.
What would you hire him as? A scouting director, or what would you hire him as?
I would let
offensive line coach.
Well, I wouldn't hire him in general, so it doesn't even matter. All right, the next question that we're getting.
Would you hire me?
Oh, no, good. You'd be the bottom of my list of people to hire. Unqualified. Nice. All right. Next question that we have from AC. And if you haven't done so already, folks, please hit that like button to help support the stream. Who is the biggest surprise to go in the first round? Someone that no one is expecting, someone with a late 2, early 3 going into the first. So Gray Zabel doesn't count for this. I'm going to put that out there. No. I don't think that he counts for this conversation because while most people have a second round grade on him, it seems like a lot of people think he's going to go in the first round. So we're not including him. Who else would you throw into that?
I mean, I think people have a lot of people have projected Maxwell Harris to go in the first round, but I don't know if a lot of people have projected him to maybe go top 20, right? Like, so that's like a little slight surprise. Jaden Higgins, Iowa State would be one, I guess, right? I mean, I think he could go in the late first. I think Jalen Knoll, his teammate, could go in the first. Like, one of those two, I think, will go in the first. I don't know which Iowa State receiver it'll be, but I think one of them will. It depends if you want the skyscraper of a wide receiver or you want the explosive yak guy, like in a Jalen Knoll. So it really depends on what your flavor is at wide receiver. That could be one. Is Ariante Ursary a surprise first rounder? I don't know. I haven't seen him a ton in first round mocks recently.
I would say he would be, and I think that if all the linemen are gone. It seemed like the
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs or the Texans, if they're still
Yeah.
sitting there, they need offensive line help. And if they wait until the end of the second round, they're going to be just doing the same crap that they did last year, where they
Yep.
waited too long and then they kind of put their hands up in the air and go, oh, well. So, yeah, I think that Ursary makes
Ur-
sense
Ur-
as an
Urs-
option here.
Did you see what Ursary said in a recent interview about Andy Reid? Did you
No,
see that?
no, what was it?
He said when he was talking to the Chiefs, he said he's got great vibes with the Chiefs. They've had a great relationship so far. He told Andy Reid apparently if they draft him, he'll buy him a cheeseburger every single day. Which is just amazing.
That's a pretty good
dude.
bit. I love that. I love that.
Absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, I think he could be a first rounder potentially because he's got traits, right? Like, I mean, he's long, he's massive, he tested really well for. I mean, I know his short area stuff wasn't great, but like his explosives were really good. I mean, he ran a fast 40, he had good jumps. So like Ursa, I think makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to think if there's like another guy where it's like, wow, that would be surprising, but like. Is Darius Alexander surprising? The D tackle out of Toledo? Like, is that a surprise?
I
don't
think that
know.
he would. I think he would be a good name to throw in there as an
Yeah.
unexpected one.
Like
I mean, he's
maybe,
got the tools, he's got the athleticism of a guy that we would talk about in consideration for the first round. And yeah, I would say he's a surprise because he's not being brought up by many people. Not a lot of people are projecting him in the first round right now, so he's a decent
Yeah.
name to consider.
I mean, we already mentioned one kind of, but like Xavier Watts potentially going in the late first
Right.
rounds. I mean, like that wouldn't be shocking to me overall. It wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah, no, that's completely plausible. All right, next question. Again, if you haven't sent us a question yet, send it in the chat and hit the like button. This is a comment from Ice. Guys, I swear my Titans are making the biggest mistake by taking Cam Ward. Look, we have entertained a number of these questions about the fear of drafting Cam Ward for the Titans. As a fan of a team that does not have a quarterback, that has not had a future at quarterback since Eli Manning, when you have the chance to take the one good quarterback in this class, you can't complain. You take him.
Yeah.
You don't overlook it. You don't think twice about it. You just take him. He has the highest potential out of any of these quarterbacks. He would have still gone in the first round if after his season at Miami was a part of last year's quarterback class because he has the tools of a first round quarterback. They don't have to play this stupid game that everyone else is playing where they have to talk themselves into a player who's probably going to be a backup quarterback, a player who would normally go in the second round. You have the ability to change the direction of your franchise with a prospect like Cam Ward. So you should be very happy with this pick.
Yeah. Connor, let me just make sure I found it. Yeah, Connor Laws, which you remember last show, Joe, we had to convince him why taking Cam Ward was a good idea. He actually said early in the chat,
I saw that.
I reconvinced myself that the Titans need to pick Abdul Carter at number 1. So look, man, there's going to be anxiousness about the Cam Ward pick to Tennessee. And there's nothing I can say to make anybody feel better about it. All I can say is if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a future. That's just all it comes back to, right? Like that's it. And I understand that there's volatility to Cam Ward. I understand that there is a high ceiling and there's not a really favorable floor. I totally get that. But ultimately, you could have said the same thing, and I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. I promise I'm not, Joe. But I remember when Patrick Mahomes was drafted by the Chiefs at I think it was number 10 overall in that class, right? Everyone talked about the same thing. Man, his ceiling is awesome, but like his floor is scary, right? His floor is scary. And I understand that in that situation, you have Andy Reid, you have a great offensive mind, so like you trust it a little bit more than what Tennessee has right now. But ultimately, the ceiling is so good that I would just draft Cam Ward. If I was making the selection at Tennessee, I would draft Cam Ward over Abdul Carter. And I love Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter is literally my number 1 player in this class. Same. I love Abdul Carter. But if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a future. You just don't. So I'm a fan. It's easier said than done for me, who doesn't have a job on the line if I'm wrong. But I would rather just keep swinging for the quarterback. Keep swinging. Just keep swinging. I feel like I'm doing like the Nemo bit right now, right? Just keep swimming. Just keep swinging, dude. Just keep swinging. Eventually, you'll hit one. And if you hit one, it completely changes the direction of your franchise, the future of your franchise. I would draft Cam Ward at number 1, even though he's not my top ranked player.
Most importantly, if there's one position that I'm drafting, if I'm deciding between taking a player based on upside and floor, I'm going with upside 10 times out of 10. having a high upside player that can eventually become a top quarterback in the NFL, top 5, is something that teams and franchises spend decades searching for.
Right.
If you fall and convince yourself into the sad world of, well, we need steadiness at the position. And if you do that, you are going to eventually hit a ceiling. You are eventually going to hit a wall, and you are going to be stuck to that wall. And you're maybe going to be satisfied with being in the playoff conversation every couple of years, or maybe every year, and you don't really get past the wild card or anything like that. That's completely fine. Mm-hmm. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, are we ever going to compete for a Super Bowl? Are we ever going to be a real threat in the NFL? Like the guys that I think of immediately that fit that. Geno Smith is a really good example of that. He's a good starting quarterback. It's hard to come by good starting quarterbaks, and he's fine.
You hate Geno, man. You hate Geno. You hate him. You hate Geno.
He is fine. He's completely fine. This is a take that people aren't going to like. I think Jared Goff is one of those players that also fits that. Like, I think Jared Goff is fine, and he's got a really good roster around him. But I question if the Lions are ever going to get over this hump where they just keep getting really close to the NFC Championship game, and they can't get past it. Just because they don't have the game-changing quarterback that is able to win in the tight game situations to make the big play. Cam Ward makes the big play. He makes it often. He takes a lot of dumb risks, but the big plays, the highlights, the game shifters, that is what you're investing in. And that's what Cam Ward brings to the table.
I agree. I tentatively agree. A funny comment in the chat. Can I read this one before we go on to another question? We had from Trust Me Bro, I'm Country, who said, what if Jackson Dart goes before Cam Ward? The Dart glaze is crazy right now. Hilarious.
I understand that this is a joke, obviously.
I love it, though.
It's obviously not going to happen, but yeah, this has been the most nauseating part of the draft cycle. Jackson Dart, I watched his film a while ago, and I was like, cool, man. He's fine. Good day 2 pick. But the I'm trying to not be graphic with describing this. The glazing, the glazing of how he has been talked about has been so nauseating because he doesn't do anything well. He does everything.
Joe, we have people comparing him to Josh Allen. Like, that has happened in this draft cycle, dude. I've seen at least 3 to 4 people. I'm not going to throw names out there because it's a little disrespectful. But yes,
I don't care who.
Dude, just go on Twitter and search Jackson Dart, Josh Allen. It has been out there several times. And I feel like I feel like I need to go get new glasses, or I need to watch different film, because I'm just like, where on earth am I watching Jackson Dart where it's like plus arm strength? Like, I just don't see it, man. And I've talked to people in the league that I trust a lot, and other people in the NFL draft space that I respect a lot. And I haven't heard anybody say, like, I think the most I've gotten is he has average to slightly above, he has average to slightly below average arm strength. And that's what I see. Like, average arm strength for the NFL standards.
I can't believe that's something that people want to invest in.
Josh Allen was a freak show who had a high ceiling, low floor, kind of what we're talking about with Cam Ward, right? Where it's like a lot could go right, a lot could go very, very wrong. He was a boomer bust prospect coming out of Wyoming. But a team took a chance on him. I think it was the 8th overall selection by Buffalo that year because the tools were outrageous. Jackson Dart's tools are not outrageous. He's a good runner. He's got a solid frame. He's like 6'2", 225. He's got a solid frame. His arm is not plus. Like, it's just not. It's very average for the NFL. What tools am I watching for that says top 10 NFL draft pick? We're literally watching. This is the weirdest thing, right? We're watching Shedeur Sanders fall down the board a little bit. He's probably going to be more in like the teens or at 21, most likely at this point. You know why, Joe? You know why? Because Shedeur doesn't have great tools either. Okay, cool. He's sliding.
Well, wait, but Shedeur at least has compensating traits, though. Like, he's got his accuracy is way better. His decision making is way better than Jackson Dart's. That's what I keep bringing up is like, okay, if we have 2 players and we're talking about them that don't have the requisite physical tools that we seek out in quarterback prospects, you need to have a compensating trait. Compensating trait is between Shedeur Sanders' ears. It is his decision-making. It is his urgency. It is the way that he has elevated bad football teams. You're telling me that Jackson Dart crapped his pants in multiple games because things didn't didn't open up the way that they needed to on various plays.
That's my point, though. This is my point. Is Shador's falling down the board because of lack of traits? Okay, understandable. I get it, right? I get it. But how is now Jackson Dart climbing up the board when he also lacks traits? How are both those things the same? I don't understand. I just don't understand how one guy is falling down the board because of deficiencies, but a guy's rising up the board who has similar deficiencies. I'm just very confused about that. And IGK put in the chat. I forgot about that one, actually. I wasn't even talking about this one. But John Gruden, his quarterback camp was literally one that compared him to Josh Allen. Literally compared him to Josh Allen in like a tweet and stuff. I'm just like, I don't understand, man. I don't get it. I don't get it. If there's anyone close to Josh Allen in this class, it's like maybe Cam Ward. But even he's not a good comparison because he's a lot smaller, right? Like he's not nearly as tall. But like,
no one
compares
to Josh Allen.
Well, yeah, there's no Josh Allen in this class. Yeah, tools wise. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Josh Allen has the strongest arm I've ever seen. I've never seen a stronger arm. I mean, Brett Favre had a crazy arm. John Elway had a crazy arm, but I'll take Josh Allen's arm strength over those guys. I would personally.
Yeah. To round this out with Dart before we move on to the next question.
Do you see it last comment? That was hilarious. By the way.
Wait, what was it?
Do not repeat.
Maybe
do
Dart
not
crapped
repeat
himself because he. Okay, maybe that's possible, Beefeater. I just brought up the example of how eventually when you draft a guy who has a clear ceiling, who's higher floor, your team eventually gets halted. Two guys that we have compared Jackson Dart to that we have done that are far more, we're more comfortable doing. Andy Dalton, Derek Carr. Andy Dalton with the Cincinnati Bengals. What led them to eventually move on from Andy Dalton, and now they have Joe Burrow. And now Bengals fans couldn't be more ecstatic with the way that Joe Burrow, who is a top 10 or better quarterback, with the way that he plays. It's the fact that he was limited, and in these tight playoff games, they couldn't get over the hump. Derek Carr. The Raiders were a middling team that was always on the cusp of the playoffs, or there would be some years where they'd be good enough to be in the playoffs, but they weren't much better than the last team in. Even if they had a good record, they were still not much better than that last team in because they had favorable schedules. Both of those quarterbacks very clearly hit that ceiling early, and so did the teams around them. It was every draft cycle, it was every offseason. Well, maybe if they just got this, maybe if they just got that, they need this. And then the roster ages out and they're starting from scratch. That is a slow, painful, awful, boring death for a fan. That if that is what you're going with at quarterback, is to feel hopeful and then realize and then see the same thing over and over again until it dies flat. I would much rather take the swing on Cam Ward. I would much rather take the swing on Josh Allen. I would much rather take the swing on Jalen Hurts. In this class, that swing would be Jalen Milroe. I don't want to take the swing on Jackson Dart because it is acting like you're swinging for the fences when you're actually just laying down the softest bunt possible.
At least not at the right value, right? Like there is value to this conversation as far as like Jackson Dart in round 3 comparative to like taking a quarterback in the round 1.
Yeah.
Like there's interesting comparisons there, but I mean, yeah, I think Andy Dalton's a very easy comparison. I really do. People didn't love my JP Lossman comparison to him early in this draft process, but we'll leave that one alone, I guess. But crazy Andy Dalton, and I don't love the Derek Carr comp as much because I think Dart's a little more athletic than Carr, and Carr actually Carr has a strong arm. Like Derek Carr does not lack arm strength. He's got a pretty strong arm. Andy Dalton had a very average NFL arm, but was a good athlete and was tough in the pocket and all those types of things. The same things that we're saying about Jackson Dart, because there's things to like. He's a pretty good athlete, and I think he's nails in the pocket. I like that about Jackson Dart. I like that he is unravelable, whatever.
Unfazed. He's unfazed.
He's unfazed against pressure, and he will stay in there consistently, and he'll take it under the chin, and he'll get back up. I love that part about him because I do think that having quarterbacks that evaluate and can work against pressure consistently is very important, right? I think that's very important. I think Jackson Dart does that pretty well. But I just think the general lack of arm strength, and he's late a lot too, man. That's my biggest issue with him when you combine the two is that, Joe, if you lack arm strength, you can still be successful in the NFL. You can.
Yes.
If you're on
but this is why Shador Sanders is good, is that he is very anticipatory. I don't mean to cut you off, but that is why I like Shador, is that he anticipates knowing how to play despite the lack of the arm strength. But you
Right.
watch Jackson Dart, you're right. He is late. Go watch his film. He's
late a
throwing
lot.
behind guys. It's all over film. He's
And-
not leading anyone.
And if you have an average to below average arm and you're late, what happens, Joe?
You get
What
picked
happens?
off.
you
get picked off, or you're the
a
ball's
lot of turnover
incomplete.
worthy plays. Yeah,
I'd rather the turnover worthy plays be what Cam Ward does, which is I
Where he
am
takes too
so
many chances.
confident
Yeah.
in my arm that I'm going to thread the ball into this tight ass window.
Right.
If I miss by a foot, yeah, it's getting
Mhm.
picked off. If I hit, it's a touchdown. Not
Right.
I'm indecisive as shit, and my arm can't drive the ball into this open window, so it gets picked off by a linebacker. He's Kenny Pickett.
It is a bad combination to have, to be late and also not have a great arm strength. Like that's a bad combination to have.
I missed what you said at the end of that because I was fixing my headphones, but let's move on to the next question regardless.
Let's do it. Yep.
Alex says, and this was one of the things that we wrote down. By the way, if you're tuning in, we've got a nice audience in here. The chat is very active. Please hit the like button on the stream and also comment your thoughts on the 2025 NFL Draft. We are going to be live for another hour. We're going to try and get to as many questions as possible until that hour is up. Why would the Jags from Elks be stupid and draft Genty at 5? I had projected, I'll let you jump in on this because I think that you've got a lot of good info here, but I had rationalized taking Tyler Warren for the Jaguars, that you get a weapon, you have an offensive-minded coach who's a creative offensive coach to set up Trevor Lawrence to succeed. I never even considered Genty. Their offensive line's fine. It's probably one of the better offensive lines in the top 10 picks. Yeah, they need a left tackle, and I thought that they could be in consideration for Armand Membu, but Genty of the Jaguars is probably one of the better fits for teams in the top 5. I like it better than I like him going to the Raiders. I think that this could end up being a pick that in a couple of years we're talking about how Liam Cohen's turned him into a complete dynamo.
I so tough. I would take Mason Graham at 5. I just would. Defense tackle.
Same.
That would be my guy if I had to take someone. I can rationalize it only if. And this is something I don't know, Joe, because I'm not in the building and I'm not working with the talents, right? And I'm not looking at the talents in that perspective of the team building perspective. But this clearly states to me that Liam Cohen thinks that he could turn it around very quickly, right? Because you're not taking a running back at 5 if you don't think that you have enough around him foundationally, quarterback, offensive line, defensive pieces, to have a really quick turnaround. If they have that turnaround, then it's possible that we look back on this and say, we may have thought this was a luxury pick at 5, but he was actually just the missing piece. Because I would argue this, and I don't know if people agree with this or not. The Jaguars are a lot more talented than the 5th overall selection from a roster perspective. A lot more talented. Yeah. They underperform with talent consistently the last couple of years. There's a lot more talent than what we've been led to believe in Jacksonville. So if they believe that they have the foundational pieces, the Josh Allen Hines, Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., if they believe that that foundation is good enough to take a luxury at 5 and to take a player that they love at 5 that maybe isn't their biggest need, quote unquote, then I think that that's what they're kind of leaning into overall here. So I won't know how good of an ideology that is until I see them this year. It's possible that we have a quick turnaround because I remember this with the Rams, right? When McVay took over, Joe, everyone thought the Rams had the worst roster ever because of how bad they were. But then Sean McVay gets in there and he quickly turns it around because it's like, oh, they actually had some guys. Like, that wasn't that bad, right? And they had Gurley and those types of guys who were like, oh, okay, they turned it around pretty quickly here. I think there's a potential turnaround quickly for Jacksonville, and if they do, we could be looking back on the Genty pick and say it may have been deemed as a luxury, but the roster was a little bit better than maybe we were giving them credit for.
Right. I think that that's been a general mischaracterization for the Jaguars because they were so bad. They were also one of the most unexpectedly bad teams last year because you look at them, you're like, got a pretty good team. And I think that Sean, my roommate and co-host for Hack City, he hates Trevor Lawrence for some reason, which I don't get. Like he's a gifted player who didn't have a lot around him. He had one really good receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. Imagine now you've got a dynamic, explosive running back in Ashton Genty. Let me throw this out there though. Do you think that Trevor Etienne gets moved before the start of training camp? He's on the last year of his deal. I think that would make a lot of sense for them to try and move him to a team that's looking for a space-killing running back.
I think that Trevor Etienne will definitely be on the move because he's in this draft, doofus. But Travis Etienne, I do think.
Travis, sorry.
I'm just kidding. I was mean. I don't know why I called you doofus. That was actually
that was
very,
me.
very
You
mean.
do it all the time. You text me that all the time. You're one of the most hurtful people. No one can be mean to me on Twitter, more mean than you are. But continue. Sorry.
Why do you stick around then, Joe? This is a love hate.
I need you. I need you. You're the other reason why I have any success.
Don't say that. That sounds so bad.
I'm joking.
No, I mean, I think it's possible. If you draft a running back at 5, there's obviously you're unsettled in the room, obviously, right? So like maybe you trade him for something. Travis Etienne, when he's healthy, is a good player. Like he is, but he's just been so banged up the last couple years, man. When he's been healthy, though, he's been pretty good. So if he has any type of value, he's still pretty young relatively for the running back kind of runway. So yeah, I think it's possible depending on what happens.
Here's an awful take. I think they should move him to slot receiver. I think that you need receivers. You need a little bit of juice. Well, wait, hold on. Don't roll your eyes at me on that one, because when they drafted him, one of the talking points was that they were going to ask him to play in the slot. They were going to ask him to play.
Stupid. You know who said that? Right?
Urban Meyer.
That was Urban Meyer. It was so dumb.
It's not a bad foot. He's super quick-footed and he's
not a natural receiver, Joe. He fights the football. He's not a natural receiver. That's why it was such a dumb take. It was such a dumb take at the time. That was one of Urban Meyer's least thought-provoking things he's ever said.
You've got athletes. Get the athletes the football. Get him the football. All right, let's get to the next question. We've got a lot in here.
I think Urban Meyer, who lasted like how many games in the NFL, is a great indicator of NFL success, right? Like, come on, man.
He's a legend.
He's a great college coach.
He's a legend in bars. He's a legend at.
I've actually sat at that bar. You know that?
Have you really? Why?
It's Urban Meyer's bar. It's called is it called Urban's? I forget what it is, but it's literally in.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's right out, like it's right near Columbus. Like technically it's not Columbus, but like yeah, I've been in that bar before. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, we've got a lot of questions that we're going to try and get to. Yeah, let's start rolling through these. If people have more questions, 2025 NFL draft questions, comment them below. And if you haven't done so already, we've had a lot of people that have hopped into the stream today, and you guys aren't hitting the like button. We know who you are. We know where you live. Hit that like button, please. Next question that we have from we got another one here from Elks. Let's make this one a little bit more short because we've answered a lot of questions from Elks. Okay. Where do y'all have Ransom and Hancock? Elks is an Ohio State fan, so hence why he's asking this. I'm high on both of them. What do you think?
I like Ransom a lot because I think that he changed his style a little bit. Like earlier in his career, he was more of like rangy safety type, but then he really dove into like the enforcer role this past year, fully healthy. He's been banged up, obviously a decent amount during his Ohio State career, but dude's pretty explosive downhill and he's a great tackler. I think that Ransom will at worst be a high-end special teamer on the NFL level and will be a rotational piece on the back end, but he has starting upside as a strong safety type. Hancock's super interesting because Hancock was brought in as a outside corner recruit, was a high-end recruit coming out of high school. He got hurt a lot early in his career, Joe, and then they moved him to slot because you had Denzel Burke, you had Davison Igbinosun. You're like, I need to get this kid on the field, but like we have 2 good outside corners already, right? So he played the slot the last 2 years. I know that at least there's a few teams out there, Elks, that I can say for certainty actually like Jordan Hancock as a potentially developmental outside corner. So I'm interested to see if a team drafts him to kind of reprogram a little bit, rebuild, and try to get him to play outside corner again like we saw in the past. He's a very gifted athlete. He ran like 4.41 at the pro day. He had like a 40-inch vert. Like he's very talented athletically, but I think he was misused a little bit because I don't think he's like a natural slot corner. So interested to see how a team utilizes him. I would personally draft Lathan Ransom early day 3, like somewhere in the 4th round. I would draft probably Hancock maybe like 5th, 5 to 6, because he's a little bit more of a developmental guy than a guy that I can depend on day 1.
Yeah, I like Ransom. I think that Ransom's one of the few players as a starting safety. This isn't a really great quality safety class, and I'd feel pretty secure drafting him and lining him up in the box and letting him go to work. And Hancock's a fine option, though, as you just talked about there. A highly recruited kid who has some potential. It's just a interesting corner class. So he might end up getting slotted a lot later. than what we're projecting here. All right, let's get to
Urban
got a lot of-
Meyer's Pine House. Someone put in the
Well,
chat. Yes.
Beefeater commented a very unhinged comment. Beefeater's
Oh,
on a rack, a
the
rack.
proctologist thing, right? I
He,
saw
he
that. Yeah.
he's on a run like Rack would be on in the Hack City chat. I'm starting to wonder if Beefeater has is Rack on the other show. All right, man, we've barely made it
I
through
actually
some
know
of these questions.
Beefeater like in real life. So yeah.
Well, we need to figure out if he's
If he's Rack? No, there's no way he's Rack. There's zero chance he's Rack.
man, there's a lot of questions that we haven't gotten to. All right, we got to be a little
Let's go,
more
man.
succinct with answering these.
Yes.
We're not doing our due diligence here. All right. I'm trying to. Okay, here's the next one from Sam. As a Steelers fan, I refuse to believe that Shador Sanders is the pick. Am I just in denial? And will I be depressed alongside Joe and the Jackson Dart-led Giants? If not, who else could they pick at 21? Well, the sad reality here for Steelers fans, you guys have to come out of this draft with an option to start. They don't have to. Maybe they believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to change his mind, but you can't. You can't put all your chips on the table for Aaron Rodgers. Like you need someone who can start. Shador Sanders is your best option to start. He's the only other guy that I would feel comfortable with starting early on in their careers. And I like the fit with him in Pittsburgh. I think that he would do well in that offense, and he doesn't have to do everything. Like I think that with an improved offensive line too, that is his best possible destination. I would like this pick, Sam.
Well, I think that even if you do sign Aaron Rodgers, I think you still need to invest in the quarterback position regardless, because that's a 1 year stopgap, man. Like it is. So maybe it's not a first rounder, but maybe it's a day 2 pick, whatever. I think, Sam, are you in denial? Maybe slightly. I think the Steelers are the most likely destination for Shador Sanders if I had to guess right now, a few hours before the draft. I think that they are the ones that make the most sense. I think that they need him. I think he might need them a little bit too. Like they've been big on like stability, right? Like the Sanders camp. So there's not a more stable organization as far as like consistently winning 10 games every single year and making the playoffs than the Steelers. I mean, you've had 3. Joe, haven't they had like 3 coaches in the last like 60 years, right? Or something like that? Like some crazy thing. Like they are the definition of stability in the NFL. So I think that it makes the most sense. I'm like back and forth with Shador. I don't hate Shador. I don't love Shador as a player. Like I don't. I'm somewhere in the middle. Like he's fine. He has the potential to be a solid to good NFL quarterback. I do think there's a cap on the ceiling. I don't love the ceiling with him, but I do think that the Steelers are a team that definitely have a lot of interest in Shador, and I think that is probably the most likely destination as of now.
Again, the biggest thing for me is you've got an aging out roster. You've spent multiple draft classes successfully. You've picked some really good offensive linemen that have shown how good the O-line could be in the next few years. It's a young core with a lot of upside, a lot of talent. Shador Sanders, out of any of the available options, is the best. You can't wait till next year. You have no idea what the available free agents are going to be next year. You don't know who is going to be available on the trade market this upcoming year. Shador Sanders, I think, is one of the few guys that we talk about, and I know I went on this whole tirade earlier. It's a higher floor starter. I see higher upside with Shador Sanders than I do with Jackson Dart personally, because again, he's a quicker decision maker. He's a lot more consistently accurate. I think he improvises a lot better. And when things break down, which happened a lot at Colorado, he was able to play really well. Knowing that he played in the Shermer offense where it was a lot of screens and a lot of short passes, I think that translates to what Arthur Smith is trying to do. They need something. And out of any available quarterback, I'd rather take him than Tyler Shuck or especially Jackson Dart. And Jalen Milroe is not ready to start right now. That's like a 2-3 year project. Yeah. Like so this is what the craziest part of it to me about this, and we're going to move on to the next question.
Yep.
Steelers fans were generally frustrated with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and that whole debacle. How the hell can you rationalize Mason Rudolph? Like how can you go, well, they didn't seem too happy with how we handled last year. Let's give them something that's much worse. There has to be something here. And Shador Sanders is your best option.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, not to rehash it, I think that he is the most likely Steeler if I had to pick of any of these quarterbacks right now. I think that he makes the most sense. Yeah, we can move on from there. I think that makes most sense.
Elks's next question that he had, I'll take Dart or Shuck in the second for my Colts. I feel like if there's a team that's not going to draft a quarterback, it's the Colts. I think that
Why?
you spent one early rather. They spent money on bringing in Daniel Jones. You're already over invested in Anthony Richardson. You got to spend all those early picks on a supporting cast. Like, if you've already over invested into something that's not working, buying a contingency plan is not going to suddenly make the situation better. You got to go down with the damn ship, and you got to at least try to get the damn ship to stop sinking. So the only way that you're going to do that is invest in the offensive line, invest in receiver, invest in tight end, invest in whatever it is. Like, I feel like that in the first 4 or 5 rounds, it doesn't make sense for the Colts to take a quarterback.
I forgot that they got Daniel Jones in free agency. I forgot about that. That's hilarious. They should now trade Anthony Richardson to New York. That should be the next thing.
I'd be fine with that. I would actually be fine with that.
I know you would. But yeah, that would be hilarious. I can't say anything's off the table though, just because. I mean, Daniel Jones. They signed Daniel Jones to like a low end contract too, right? Like he didn't get. Wasn't it like a 1 year deal? Did he sign? Like
it was a 1 year, $14 million deal.
Yeah. So he might not be there in 2026 anyway. And if you're drafting one of these quarterbacks, I mean, you have to think they are seeing what they have at quarterback up top. Like this is the last chance for Anthony Richardson, and he obviously has a little bit of competition now in the room with Daniel Jones. So there's a possibility that you are out with one of those quarterbacks after 2025 anyway. So I think investing in a day 2 quarterback isn't the worst thing in that situation.
I just think though that like when you're in this circumstance where the original investment is already showing signs of not working, being overly cautious of like, let's have a backup plan. Let's have which you already did with Daniel Jones. Let's have a long-term backup plan. Then maybe this. I mean, like that's how you bury yourself further. Wasting a pick in a year where there's really good depth at every other position but quarterback. I don't know. I just don't think that that's smart roster building. I just don't think that gets you where you're trying to go.
I mean, it depends what your ideology is on it, because I remember like I thought the Jalen Hurts 2nd round pick to the Eagles was stupid. Like I did not like that at all. And shortly after, I mean, they've been to 2 Super Bowls and won a Super Bowl with them, right? So and Carson Wentz ended up flaming out pretty quickly.
Yeah, but that's an exception though. That's an exception.
It is an exception. Yeah, it is. And for the most part, I agree with what you're saying. But the point is that there are exceptions sometimes, though. There are. I mean, it really depends on who's there and how much you believe in them. Like,
yeah, but like, what day 2 exception is there that you're like, you know what? Maybe that could like that. Like, there's just maybe Milrow. Maybe Milrow would be course.
Maybe it's Milrow. Milrow and Richardson in the same room would be pretty hilarious. I mean, that's the most athletic quarterback room of all time.
The wing T. Run the wing T. Draft Tyler Warren in the first round. Yeah. You got Tyler Warren, Anthony Richardson, Jalen Milrow in one backfield. Don't call any passing plays. We're going to run 2 tight ends, 2 running backs.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just fix the Colts, guys. You're welcome. Connor Laws asks, will Watts be available at 35 for the Titans or even Luther Burden at pick 35? I think at least one of them will be, right?
I think there's a chance both are. Yeah. I think there's a high possibility that Xavier Watts is there. Like I said, I think there's a chance that maybe he's a back end of the 1st round guy in a certain situation. I don't think that's crazy, but I think he's more than likely a 2nd rounder. So yes, he's possible he's going to be there 35, Connor. I would say this though. I think that there's a possibility that Burton's there based upon everything I've heard. I think it's kind of ludicrous, to be honest. I think that I would.
Yeah, he's going to be one of those picks that we're like, what the hell? Why did this guy not go earlier?
I would draft Luther Burden in the 1st round, but there's a lot of talk about him potentially sliding out of the 1st round. So that's possible. My question would be, if you're the Titans, Burden, right, would have to be the pick over Watts, right? Like you wouldn't even think about it, right? I mean, they don't really have wide receiver play outside of Calvin Ridley. Like they need some guys. So yeah.
Especially when you get to the 3rd round. There's a strong likelihood that you're looking at receiver options that are likely number 4 guys in your rotation. I really think I'm really intrigued by this. And just quick thoughts on this before we keep getting to more of these questions. I feel like the run on receivers is going to happen in the 2nd round. What do you think about that?
As far as you're saying, there's going to be a high run in the early portion of the 2nd round.
A run. A
A-Rod.
run. So like
Yeah.
we're talking about
Mhm.
Burden might be one of the first guys, and then we're going to go Noel Higgins. We're going to see Jalen Royals come off the board. We could see maybe Jack Besh come off the board. Like we just start to see all the guys that have been talked about as players who can actually be contributors. And by the
Right.
time we get to like the middle of the third round, it's
Mhm.
all the the Ty Feltons of the world. It's all those guys where the Xavier Restrepos where you're like, yeah, maybe this guy could be good, but I don't really feel very secure about that because there's that
Yeah.
lack of depth that everyone's going to be motivated.
If there's the offensive line run early in this draft that we think there's going to be, I think that there is a high possibility there's a wide receiver run more in the early portion of the second round than there will be like the mid to end of the first round. I mean, think about it this way, Joe. So Matthew Golden probably goes first rounds. Tedero McMillan goes first rounds. After that, like Luther might not be a first rounder, potentially. Maybe one of the Iowa State receivers goes in the late first, but then early in the second round, you have to think either a Jaden Higgins or a Jalen Knoll goes pretty early there. How about an Alec Ayomanor out of Stanford? Like he could be a guy.
Guy
Trey
gets
Harris
forgotten.
out of Ole Miss. Like there's a bunch of guys that could be in like that 33 to like 45, 50 buckets that are play the wide receiver position. So yeah, I could buy a wide receiver run for sure.
Guys, again, reminder, please hit the like button if you've been tapped in. Appreciate everyone who's been commenting. We've had a lot of
channel.
Yes, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done as well. Oh, we got a super chat. We got ourselves a super chat. Charlie Sinclair asks us, draft hot take. Emeka Ibuka is the Chargers guy at pick 22. I was listening to the Athletics. I mentioned this earlier. Their NFL show. Robert Mays. I almost said Travis Mays, who's with A to Z Sports. Robert Mays, Dane Brugler, Derek Klassen were kind of talking about like the late blurbs of things that they heard, and this was one of them. So this is a really great comment, Charlie. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, and for sending this to us. I think that this makes a lot of sense, and I don't think that a thought that I hadn't had prior, Ryan. I don't think that Ladd McConkey is like relegated to playing in the slot. I think that you could get creative to move him to the outside and Emeka Ibuka play in the slot, and you could be creative with deploying that. But Charlie, I like the thought. I think that of any team that needs to come out of the first round with a receiver, it's the Titans.
Yeah. You mean the Chargers? You said the Titans.
Chargers. Geez, yes. Sorry, the Chargers.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You made my mind go a couple different ways there. Charlie, I do not, and thank you so much for super chat, man. Very appreciated. I do not think that's a hot take at all. I mean, they need an offensive weapon at 22, whether it's a tight ends, whether it's a wide receiver, maybe a running back, depending on how the board falls. Like we'll see. But I think Emeka Ibuka makes a lot of sense because I don't think that either of them are regulated to playing in the slot necessarily. Like I think Ladd McConkey has enough juice to be able to play outside and to affect and work down the field. I also think Emeka Ibuka could play outside at Z a decent amount. Like, again, I think he's better at slot, but you don't have to just throw him in the slot all the time. Like, there can be some snap share where you're mixing and matching those two. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And, I mean, we're also talking about a philosophy under Coach Harbaugh where they want to run the football and they want to get the ball out of their hands, right? Like that's what they want to do overall. And I think adding guys that are kind of short, explosive separators is a pretty interesting. I think I literally had Emeka Ibuka in a mock recently. I ended up doing too many mocks, but I did a Los Angeles Chargers specific mock this like Monday, and I think I had him getting Emeka Ibuka at 22. So I think it would make a lot of sense.
We have a few questions in the Twitter chat. I'm going to wait to get to those for anyone who's commenting on Twitter. We're prioritizing the YouTube questions, but we do certainly appreciate any Twitter questions that we have. I would like to prioritize, again, getting to more of these YouTube ones. Charlie, thank you again so much for the super chat. Really appreciate you sending that over to us. Next question. Got a lot of questions from a lot of the same people. I appreciate you folks, but we want to get to some new people. Trust. Oh wait, no, you already read that one. Brian Galvin. Nope, that's not a question. That's a comment. A lot of comments in here. I should have been a little more prepared.
We need a producer. We need another producer for this.
Yes. Yeah. That would be
questions and such. Yeah.
All right. Avid Mods. Which position should the Bills prioritize with number 30? Defensive line or cornerback? I've been on 2 Bills shows
Mm-hmm.
and I've said this, and it wasn't really met with like excitement. I
Uh,
think that the Bills should trade back. I really do. I know that they did it last year, but think of the impact that you have by trading back, accumulating picks, and having the ability to, in a draft class that has a lot of depth, round out the roster and have good starters. You don't need any more high upside starters. Your whole roster is high upside starters. You have Josh Allen, you have Ed Oliver, you have Greg Rousseau, who's a great player. Like, you have some really nice players on your roster. Just get the players who are going to be quality contributors around that supporting cast. You're not going to get an all pro with every single pick. So trade back in a class that has a lot of depth. That's my 2 cents.
I want an interior defensive lineman to pair with Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver is very explosive, more of a 3 technique though. He's more of a penetrator. I would love to get. I mean,
Tyreek.
Kenneth Grant's probably off the board, but I don't think it's unreasonable that he might be there. I mean, it's possible. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's there, right? So Tyreek, I think, is the one that makes the most sense by like a landslide. Tyreek Williams is the best run-stopping interior defensive lineman in this class, and you could throw him in at the 1, shade nose, whatever you want to do, 2-2-I at times, whatever, and you could tell him, take up blocks, let Terrell Bernard run behind you, free things up for Gregory Rousseau and the rest of this defensive line. They got Joey Bosa, obviously, also. So, like, they have guys there. I just think that they need an interior defensive lineman that does a lot of the dirty work, right? Like, they need somebody like that. And I think Tyreek Williams at 329 pounds would be a perfect fit for Buffalo. Perfect.
That's been the one that I've gone with. Maxwell Hairston's probably going to be off the board. I also really like the thought of Maxwell Hairston as an option for them. Again, he's probably not going to be there. But I love Tyreek Williams as a Buffalo Bill. Like, just a mashing, big-bodied, quick-footed monster in the middle that frees up Ed Oliver, just takes up space. He's not your prototypical gap filler. He is somebody who is actually got a little bit of upside to go on to become a sack-producing defensive lineman. That Tyreek Williams, as a Buffalo Bill, could go on to become one of the bigger steals of the draft if that was the first round pick.
Tyreek Williams, you are a Buffalo Bill. You heard it here first.
Hell yeah.
We are declaring this. It would be fun. I could definitely see him like jumping through a table too, right? Like getting drunk and jumping through a table. Absolutely. That's the thing in Buffalo. You haven't seen these guys do that. They do it so often. It happens every year.
I know. Shout out to Tyreek Williams though, when he showed up in a Hack City stream, because we on Hack City before A to Z Film Room, when we took over this channel, we did a video where we thought 2 years ago that he had the potential to go in the first round, and he didn't watch the video. But the question about in the title was like, "Is Tyreek Williams a first rounder?" He commented like, "You guys don't think that I'm a first rounder?" He might be. He might be. Tyreek might end up going to the first round.
Or he can end up being an early second round pick, which we were kind of talking about, like him in that show. So, I mean, I love him a lot, though, man. I think he's the most underrated defensive tackle in his class, right? Like, I mean, because he's not flashy, right? Like, it's not Derek Harmon where he's creating a bunch of pressures and Walter Nolan and that type of dude. He is a guy that's going to do all the dirty work, which nothing wrong with that, man. It makes players better.
All right. Next question that we're getting to. Trust me, bro. I'm country asks, should we be buying Cam Scadaboo? Depending on landing spot. This was put really well by Daniel Jeremiah. Okay. The media loves Cam Scadaboo. The NFL, I don't think does.
Is that what he said? I'm so vindicated if that's what he said. I love that. Yes.
Yeah. Doesn't have a top gear. If there is a day 3 guy that goes on to just stick on a roster for a really long time, and it's like, oh, hey, my team signed Cam Scadaboo in 5-6 years, and he just, is punching dudes in the mouth with his hard running, I could totally see that happening. But no, I don't think he's a 1,000-yard rusher. I don't think he's going to be a team's number 1 running back in the NFL.
Do you know what my comp was for him? I did a running back comp article. Did I tell you this?
Who was it?
Just give me one guess, and then I'll tell you. Give me one guess.
Who was that really fat fullback that the Panthers had?
Mike Tolbert?
Mike Tolbert? Yeah, Mike Tolbert.
No, it wasn't Mike Tolbert. Toby Gerhart.
He's nothing like Toby Gerhart.
How is he nothing like Toby Gerhart? How
Toby Gerhart was rocked up. He was jacked.
Yes.
Cam Scadaboo was a little chubby. Cam Scadaboo was a little chubby.
Oh my gosh. Strong runners, more explosive than they are fast. that lack change of direction and are very limited players. That is, and Toby Gerhart ended up. Do you remember Toby Gerhart was drafted in the second round?
I do remember that, and he wasn't very good.
And he wasn't very good. He was a great college player, though. I mean, he ran for almost like 2,000 yards his last year at Stanford. So, like, he was a great college player. Just like Cam Scadaboo was a great college player.
Right.
That's the difference.
All right, let's get to another question here. What is your guys' favorite pick at 5 for the Jags? We already kind of talked
Mason
about
Graham.
this.
I would love Mason Graham. I think it's going to be Genty, but I would love Mason Graham. Yes.
You said personally leaning Genty or trade down and get a pair of dynamic defenders in their first 2 picks. But yeah, we already talked about this. We strongly believe that it's going to be Ashton Genty at the pick, but Mason Graham will be a great selection for them as well. Ron reports that the Giants have traded their number 3 pick to the Raiders for 6 and 37. Is this true?
I don't think it's true. I haven't
seen that anywhere. Am I crazy?
I haven't seen it. I have not seen it. No.
Ron then asked, "Are the Raiders moving to number 3 for Genty or Sander?" Yeah, I don't know what's happening there.
Beefeater, I don't say anything about it. So, yep.
Beefeater put a long question about Italian sausages. We're not going to read that. Ron is really adamant about asking about this trade.
He's asked a bunch of times. I know. I've seen it. He's asked a bunch of times. Yeah.
We're going to jump over to the Twitter questions. Again, folks, if you are in the YouTube chat, send us a question about the 2025 NFL draft that is not related to this ghost trade that Ron thinks happened. Hit the like button, too, if you're on YouTube. We really appreciate it.
And if you want a question answered immediately, super chats always go to the front of the line, just so people know.
Yes. Yep. Which, thank you again to Charlie, who was the first super chat that we've gotten on these live streams. Beefeater asks, are the Giants good enough at offensive line to be looking at a quarterback? If so, and they want to win now, why not load up on other needs and get a quarterback out of free agency? So, okay, I'm against get a quarterback out of free agency. I don't mind the premise of getting a quarterback next year. But I agree with like the offensive line part about this, and I think that it wasn't directly addressed in the question. I think in the first 2 picks that they have, first 3 picks, they got to get a guard. Like they got to get one more lineman.
What team was this? Say this one more time. What
the
team
Giants.
Giants.
The Giants.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there needs to be an investment in their picks at offensive line. Is my point.
Yeah. I think. I mean, right tackle too, right? I mean, Evan Neal's been a disaster for the Giants, and also Andrew Thomas is a dang good left tackle, but he's hurt all the time, right? So like you need a guy that has a little bit of insurance there as well. So yeah, I think offensive line's a big one. You know, quarterback just is it's going to be what it is, right? Like you're going to have Russell Wilson, you're going to have Jameis, and you're probably going to draft a quarterback at some point. But like you need to make sure the supports are as good as possible around them. So yeah, I think offensive line should be huge for sure.
I'm trying to. Ron, can you send a link for this trade?
I don't think
that
it's
you're talking
about. That's why I missed part of what you started with, because I didn't see anything in Discord, and I have not seen anything on Twitter about it. So I think that would be a pretty big deal if that happens.
Yeah.
So
if you claim this is existing, though, please send it to us. There is breaking news though that EA Sports College Football 26 will be playable on July 10th. If anybody was wondering.
Well, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But
it has everything to do with me, though, and everything that I care about. All right, Chester asks, do you think the Vikings trade back in the first round to get more picks? What do you think?
Do I think that, say that one more time. Do I think who trades back?
Do the Vikings, you got 30 more minutes, Ryan. And
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yes.
Do the Vikings trade back in the first round to get more picks?
I think it's possible. I mean, it really depends on if there's a team that really is trying to get up for a quarterback, you know, like because they're one of those teams that in like the mid-20s that like make a little bit of sense, because the Vikings don't have like a crazy amount of needs. They need an outside corner. They can use an interior defensive lineman. They could probably use a guard, right? Like those are the 3 things that you most likely are the outcomes here. But I do think that there's value at a couple of those spots a little bit later in the draft. So I think they could be a trade back option. I like the potential of a Derek Harmon potentially there in the mid-20s, who might fall a little bit due to the shoulder injury that is kind of being brought up recently. I also love Nick Emanwari to the Minnesota Vikings. We keep talking about that one, Joe, but like pairing him with Harrison Smith for a year, and then once Harrison Smith goes off into the sunset, to have him be the guy, like that would be super interesting. So I think there's options if you stick there, but I think there's validity to trading back potentially.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ron. I think that you got duped by something. I'm really, Ron, we love you, but I'm sorry. I don't think that did I don't think that this trade has happened. I love the thought of Nick Emenwari on this Vikings defense. I think Brian Flores is the type of guy that would be so creative with deploying Nick Emenwari. And we saw that what he got out of a group of guys like that. It's not really like a super athletic defensive unit that they had. And he still got a ton of production out of that defense. So I think that that would end up being a great pick.
Andrew Van Ginkel was the most random, like 10 sacks player of all time last year for the Vikings. Randomly had,
and I doubt that he comes even anywhere close to that much production this upcoming year. I doubt he even touches it.
Who knows? But it was cool to see. It's cool to see.
All right, we got a lot of questions from Beefeater. Let's rapid fire answer these.
Do it. Yeah.
Any concerns about Abdul Carter's shoulder? He could not lift his arm in the Orange Bowl. Usually a sign some surgery may be required. Well, my counter argument there, Beefeater, he was so banged up and he still kicked Notre Dame's offensive line's ass the whole game. So no, I'm not really worried about that. That also didn't come up
shoulder
with the injury stuff. Yeah, it's the foot. That's the foot's the concern.
Yeah, it's the foot with the what was the exact fracture he had? It was like a stress fracture, right? Or actually, no, it wasn't even a stress fracture. It was a stress reaction. So nothing actually even fractured. Yeah. I guess it's just it could be in danger of actually fracturing at some point, right? Like that was kind of the concern a little bit, but I'm not worried about it. I haven't heard anybody that's overly worried about it. I think he's going to be a top 3 pick. So I don't think many people are worried about the foot long term.
Who is the most underrated wide receiver in the draft from Beefeater?
Jalen Noel. Well,
wait, let's dig a little deeper. Yeah. Let's go third round or later.
Daniel Jackson, wide receiver from Minnesota, is my day 3 wide receiver that needs more attention. He is about 5'11". He's about 195 to 200 pounds. So he's, just average size. Like he's not small necessarily, but he's also not big. He's right around 6'2", 200. But I think he's got a track background too. He ran like 10.5 or 10.6 in the 100 meter coming out of high school. So he's got a little bit of juice, but I love how the kid plays, man. Really smart technician, understands blind spots, gets in and out of breaks efficiently. I think Daniel Jackson is a potential low-end starter long-term in the right situation. But if I'm going up a little bit higher on the board, it would be Jalen Noel. I love Jalen Noel. I think he should be drafted in the top 50 picks, and I don't think you should think a second about it after you draft him in the top 50 picks.
My other answer for this question has been Caden Prather from Maryland, because like physically he is in a upper rare category for like what he can do movement wise, but his hands are so damn inconsistent and he's just not a smooth, easy catcher of the football. He's just very clunky about it. I don't know if that gets fixed. It's kind of like a big ask. So guys are natural or they're not natural at it. But if there's a player that gets drafted in the 5th, 6th round that ends up being like a really good wide receiver 3 for a team because they just scheme him the football, I feel like Prather could totally be that. And he's a guy that you and I have both spoken very highly since last summer.
Doesn't he? He just strikes me as a guy that the Baltimore Ravens are going to draft in the 5th round. He's going to be like a dynamite special teamer and maybe eventually develops into a wide receiver that can actually play for you. So height, weight, speed, 6'3", 4.46 in the 40. He's actually got pretty loose hips as well too, man. Like he gets in and out race pretty well. For whatever reason, Maryland just did not consistently throw him the football. They had like that one random game. I think it was against, was it USC, Joe? Like what was that one game where he had like 9 catches for 100 something yards, right? Like that game was silly.
It was USC. Yeah.
He was open all day, man. And they finally prioritized throwing him the football. But for whatever reason, then you would put on a game the next week and it'd be like he has like 1 catch for 12 yards and they only threw to him twice. It's just like, why are we so inconsistent with getting him the football? I do think he has a lot of upside that he brings to the table without question.
I'm going to read this next question. Then while you're answering it, I got to swap the battery on my camera. Which quarterback has the strongest arm in the draft? I am still here, but I just got to swap my camera really quick.
I think Cam Ward probably. I mean, as far as like the ability to generate velocity without much efforts, right? Like he isn't the biggest guy of all time. I mean, he's only about 6'2", about 220 pounds, but he does a really easy velocity he's able to generate even with a compromised base. I think the only other guy that I would say, like, I think Tyler Shuck has a very strong arm, relatively speaking. He's got plus arm strength in the NFL level for me, but I do think I think Cam Ward probably has the strongest arm of anybody that I've seen.
Yeah, I think my answer for this would probably be Cam Ward. There's no like Joe Milton in the class. There's no late day 2, day 3 guy that's like, oh man, maybe you take him and he could just Yeah. No, there's not one of those guys. Probably Cam Ward or Shuck in that conversation.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody lower in like the class that has like just a howitzer, but you can't really control it. Like, is there a guy this year that's like that? I'm having trouble because like Brosmer's not. I
No,
mean,
no,
Brosmer's not
everybody's
that. Like Hennigan's
yeah.
not that. I'm trying to think of like some Riley Leonard's not that. Like, there's just not really like a flamethrower at the later ends of the draft either. You know?
The whole class and why the class sucks is because it's a bunch of guys that have played a lot of football that maybe even transferred once or twice that just never really panned out and then didn't have like super big arms. Like they're all more experienced high floor players, which is why there's no excitement amongst the class. There's a lot of day two guys. And when we're
That's true.
sitting where we are, I'm going to skip this Noah Fafita question because I want to stick with 2025 stuff.
Fafita.
Joe,
Yeah.
What sort of trade package would the Giants have to put together to get Trevor Lawrence? This has been one thing that's been like kind of quietly pitched out there. I don't think it's going to happen, especially if you're drafting Genty at 5, if you're the Jaguars. But for a big contract like that, it's not a crazy big contract. I mean, it would have to be, 3 first-round picks? When was the last time a quarterback as talented as Trevor Lawrence was traded? Like, it just doesn't doesn't happen.
Well, here's the thing. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been great yet, right? Like, he's just been solid to good most of the time, but below average in others. I would say like 2 firsts and probably a day 2 pick, right? Like something like that, probably. I don't think he would fetch 3 first-round picks right now. Like, he hasn't been good enough to fetch 3 first-round picks. And isn't he on his second contract already, right? Like, he's gotten a lot of money.
Yeah, but he's also, isn't he like, he's young.
He is young, but like, isn't he on a big contract too? Because you have to put that into the conversation also of like the team that's trading for him is still going to have to.
25.
He's on the second contract though, isn't he? Didn't they give him a big deal?
He is.
Like,
he is on the second contract. Well, you don't have to re-sign him or anything.
What's that?
You don't have. Yeah, I would argue he's not.
But you're already paying him though.
Yeah, you're already paying him. But the argument here is that he's not making like top quarterback money. He's got a big deal, but he's not making like top quarterback money. So that's kind of valuable that you have him tied down for multiple years. I understand that having to pay him part is. I guess. I don't know.
Like,
I mean,
a team trading for him, I just think that lessens the amount that you have to give back because you are still taking on that contract as well, right? Like, it's not like if he was really good, if he was good and he's on a rookie contract and he's that age, that makes the amount of capital that you have to give back for him a lot higher, right? Because it's less risk for you. But you are taking on the contract, so I think that lessens it a little bit. So I would say 2 firsts and a day 2 pick would probably be a Trevor Lawrence trade.
All right, this question from Beefeater, and then we got one more Twitter question. Who goes first, Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau? JT Tuimoloau should go before him. He is more explosive. He is more athletic. He's got more upside as a pass rusher. I think he's going to be a better run defender. Jack Sawyer is example A of people who are in on him because he was a high character leader on a national championship winning team. He's a day 3 pick. Tuimoloau can go much earlier than that.
I think Tuimoloau is going to go on day 2 for sure. I think that Jack Sawyer is more of the late day 2, early day 3 bucket. I think some people in the NFL like him for have a good floor and being a leader and all that type of like the intangible stuff. But there's a reason that you're not hearing about him much, right? Because he's just kind of is what he is, man. There's nothing flashy about him. There's nothing exciting about him. And here's the weird thing, Joe. Here's the really weird thing. You want to hear something weird? So in college football, in your tackle for loss number, they include sacks into that number, right? They include sacks. He had 9 sacks. Ask me how many tackle for losses he had in the run game this year. 0. 0. He had 9 sacks, 9 tackle for loss. They include sacks in the tackles for loss. He had 0 run game tackle for losses. So while I do think that he does a good job of getting extension in the run game and setting an edge, he doesn't make any plays in the run game either. Like, he doesn't do much. He doesn't create a lot of negatives. So yeah, I'm just not in on Jack Sawyer. I've never been in on Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer he's a very average player. I think he is. Here's the easy comparison, and some people are going to say this helmet scouting, whatever. He reminds me of Sam Hubbard when Sam Hubbard came out of Ohio State. But I liked Hubbard more. I liked Hubbard more coming out of Ohio State, even though he wasn't as productive as what Jack Sawyer was. I think he's a low end. Actually, low end's not the right word. I think he's a okay rotational player in a defensive end room that will probably never be a starter. That's what I think of Jack Sawyer.
Last Twitter question, then we've got some great questions on YouTube. We're going to move
Mhm.
back to answering YouTube questions. We have got 20 minutes left. We're going to try and get to as many as possible. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Appreciate everyone who's been sticking around throughout the entirety of this and who has hit the like button already. Andy Malone wants us to know, and it looks like he actually also jumped over and asked us on YouTube as well, under the name Texas is the best. What are your thoughts on Jahdae Barron? I've been a really big fan of Jahdae Barron, and I've actually been very, compared to most prospects that have fallen into the bucket of being projected to go earlier than where I had my grade on him, I have felt the most comfortable. I had an early 2 on him, and you see a lot of projections that maybe he could go top 15, top 20. I'm good with that because I think he is one of the safest prospects in this class. I don't know if he ever like really morphs into a game-changing defensive back, but I think what makes him so valuable is that he's a great tackler. I think that he is a very instinctual player with the ball in the air. I think that despite not having the requisite length that we look for cornerbacks, that he's still really good at the catch point. He does some great work in press, again, despite not being like a super long guy. He's very fluid mover. He tested pretty well. He just isn't like this big presence that we typically call upon, and he's not like freaky fast that we look for in outside corners. I firmly believe, Ryan, that a defensive coordinator can see him and say, we're going to use him like Brian Branch. Brian Branch is one of the best nickel defensive backs in the NFL, and you were a fan of him when he got drafted last year. And I think that he plugs and plays, and he'll be one of these guys as rookie that we're talking about on a good team because he goes in the 20s that just ends up being just doing everything right. I would love for him to be on the Packers. Like, I feel like the Packers would be such a good spot for him because they've got a couple of defensive needs, and he would be a nice slot in.
But they already have a nickel. They signed Nate Hobbs this offseason. So
yeah, man. Yeah.
Well, Nate Hobbs is pretty good. He's not bad. He's healthy. He's good.
Jahdae Barron would be better than Nate Hobbs. Come on.
I don't know, man. As a nickel, I don't know. I think Jahdae Barron is a Pro Bowl potential player as a nickel, and I think he can last outside in the right system. I do not think that he is a foregone, like, definitely sticking it outside corner. I do think there's a little bit of like a scheme
specificness.
Oh my gosh, I can't say these words today, dude. These
then so don't bad. Say them.
I'm trying not to, but conversation happens, you know? Barron, outside zone-specific scheme, I think he can last out there, but I think he is a menace in the slot. Can tackle, can blitz off the edge, can play man coverage, zone discipline, all those types of things. I was thinking he can play a little bit of safety, so he's kind of that movable chess piece around his secondary, and I think that he could wear a bunch of different hats depending on what your team needs.
Garrick Reagan says he subbed to the channel. So shout out to Garrick for subbing to the channel. Appreciate you doing that. And for also letting everybody know that you did. Anyone who hasn't subbed, you're a bad person. No, I'm obviously joking. Please do it. You need to do it. Hit the like button as well. Question he asks at number 7. I lost the question. Where was it?
Uh-oh.
Damn it. Where the hell did it go? Most likely pick for the Jets at number 7.
Tyler Warren.
What do you think?
Tyler Warren, tight end, Penn State. I've been talking about that for weeks. It's starting to gain a lot of traction now from things I've heard. So Tyler Warren at 7 to the Jets. The Jets have been like hurt slightly by first-round tight ends over the years. Dustin Keller was like okay for them in the earlier 2000s. Kyle Brady was not okay for them in the 1990s. So like I definitely get that first-round tight end hasn't been very good to the Jets over the years, but I just think Tyler Warren is such a gifted player. And if you're going to make the whole thing with Justin Fields work, I think having a dynamic player to the middle of the field could be very interesting, especially if they're going to do some of their, they're going to do some of the quarterback run game stuff. They're going to do some of the heavy play action. I think Tyler Warren could be an absolute weapon. So Tyler Warren at 7 to the Jets, I think makes a lot of sense.
What if we end up with like a Warren Sapp? I know they don't really need like any interior defensive lineman that badly, but like what if this ends up being like a Warren Sapp type of a situation where you pass on Mason Graham and you go at the tight end, the tight end doesn't really work out, then you're like, oh wow, I guess we could have had Mason Graham. There's a shot that could happen. Yeah. I don't think it will. I think Tyler Warren's a much better player, but
I'd be open to Mason Graham at 7 if he's there. Like I'd be open to pairing him with Quinn and Williams. I think that would make some sense too. I'd be okay with that. I'd be all right. Right
be a pretty
tackle
nutty
too. I
defensive
think makes a
line.
lot of sense. Offensive tackle
I
makes some
like the I
sense.
like the thought of an offensive lineman. I really like the thought of Will Campbell playing right tackle or Armand Membu playing right tackle for your team, and already having Olu Fashanu and Elijah Vera Tucker. I think
It's fashion man. It's fashion.
Fashanu. Why am I blanking on the name of their center, the Ohio State kid that they got not that long ago?
I liked him. No, it
He's
was
a good player.
Wisconsin, right? Didn't he play Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Joe Tippmann.
Joe Tippmann. Yep, Joe Tippmann. Good player.
Yeah, Joe Tippmann's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Next question that we've got. Connor Watkins. This is a comment from Hip Hop Forever 3023. Connor Watkins is my 7th round gem. Do you have notes on Connor Watkins?
Connor Watkins is the Villanova quarterback, right? Yeah. He's a Villanova quarterback.
Okay, so he's not going in the 7th round.
He's not going in the 7th round. No, he'll be a free agent. He'll probably be in the camp as a camp arm, but I mean, great FCS player, great college player, really good for Villanova the last couple of years. But and I actually think don't quote me on this, but I think he was down at the College Ground Showcase. I believe. I think Connor Watkins was down. Connor Watkins was there. So he's an interesting player. He's a pretty big athlete. He moves well, but yeah, I mean, he's not. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. He's a talented college football player, though, for sure.
We're almost out of questions here, but we're going to be grounding out in 15 minutes. Juice Mofo. Which offensive tackles? Great name, by the way. Which offensive tackles do you expect to be available near the top of the second/bottom of the first? And which one do you like the most? Connerly, Ursary.
Connerly might not be available there. Just a quick note there. Yeah.
Ursary, Donovan Jackson, if we classify him as a tackle or a guard. Who else do you think?
I mean, I think there's going to be a run early on in this class. So I think Ursary from Minnesota makes some sense. I think Donovan Jackson, if you view him as an offensive tackle, it's not going to be a great end of the first round board at offensive tackle. I don't think, man. Like I think it's
going to be really bad.
I'm interested if
Anthony Belton.
Anthony Belton, not first round.
Well, second.
I mean, he's like, second, third, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm interested like with the Chiefs at 32 because at 31, obviously they need an offensive tackle, but they are in no man's land at 31. I'm interested in one if they either move up or they move back because they just do not like the value at 31 potentially. So yeah, I think it's more like when you get into day 2, when you talk about like the Chase Luntz, we talk about maybe the Charles Grants a little bit later in like day 2, like Anthony Belton you mentioned, that's more like the bucket. I don't not think it's going to be a very strong late first, early second round bucket for offensive tackles because I think Kelvin Banks is going to go higher than people think. Will Campbell's going to go pretty high. Armin Memba is going to go pretty high. And Josh Connerly might also go pretty high, right? Yeah. Like I don't think it's crazy if Josh Connerly goes in the first 20 picks. So yeah, I think the end of the first round is not going to be very nice for an offensive tackle needy team, I should say.
Ron asks us, who do you want your team to draft in the first round? My short list, I'm happy with Abdul Carter as the Giants pick. I'm a Giants fan. Sure. I would really like them in the second round to take somebody like Chase Lunt or take somebody like Donovan Jackson to improve the offensive line. And personally, I'd really love for them to end up with one of these running backs like DJ Giddens or RJ Harvey or Damian Martinez because they got to make this run game better. I also would love Jalen Knoll. I think that they need more receivers. I just don't want them to draft a freaking quarterback. And I'll leave it at that.
I'm a Los Angeles Rams fan, so they were picking at number 26, I believe, if I remember correctly. I would like at the 26 overall pick either a tight ends, if a Colson Loveland is there. Probably won't be there, but Colson Loveland would be really cool if he was there. Corner, I think, is the other spot. Like Siobhan Revel, I think would be really fun, as long as it's not Trey Amos. If it's Trey Amos, I'm actually going to cry if they pick him at 26.
God, it would be an awful pick.
Wouldn't it be so bad? It would be, but it's probably going to happen because I've been talking so much trash on Trey Amos.
It always works like that. It always works like that. The guy that you're always like, man, I can't see it, and then boom, your team drafts him.
If Revel is the pick at 26, I would be very happy. If the Rams decide to trade up to try to get a tight end, right? Like I would be interested if it's a Loveland or even a Warren, depending on how things fall. Like that would be super interesting. I'm not big on Rams wide receiver first round conversation. I know some people have talked about it, but like you have Puka, You have Devontae Adams. I think this is more like a day 2 wide receiver needy team. Linebacker, I wish there was a guy there potentially. I mean, I guess I would think about Jahad Campbell if he's there at 26. Like I would think about it for a second, but
Yeah.
I really do like corner, tight end.
What about Starks?
A couple needs.
Malachi Starks.
So the Rams aren't terrible at safety though. Like they're not bad at safety. Would I take Starks and would I be happy with Starks at 26? Yes, but he wouldn't be like the top of the board guy just because I don't think he fills like a huge need for the Rams unless the Rams team is an outside corner, which I guess is always possible. But yeah.
This is a fun question from Ron. How many FCS players get drafted and how many group of 5 players get drafted? The G5 question is too hard to answer because it's just like we could sit here and list a lot of names. But
yeah,
FCS, if we talk about Gray Zabel being the first, Charles Grant being the second.
Trying to think.
Wow, that list thins. There's no quarterbacks. There's not really a lot of running backs. Actually, there's no running backs.
Land Larison? Maybe late second.
Maybe him. So maybe that's 3 wide receivers. What wide receivers are there even?
Is Bryce Lance in this draft? It's a joke. He's not in this draft. Gosh, I don't, dude. Is there a wide receiver? I mean, there's FCS receivers in this class, obviously, but I don't think there's one of like major note. Is there? Like, I don't think so.
No, here I'm pulling up like a list that I can reference. There's no wide receivers. At tight end, I believe that we don't have...
Wait, does Max Brosmer count as a FCS quarterback?
No. Well, because just like Cam Scatterbo would technically count as... So there's no tight ends that fit the billing. We already talked about 2 offensive tackles. I'm not seeing any other offensive tackles. Jared Penning.
Your boy, man.
No. They're... What about Marcus Ware? Do you think Marcus Ware gets drafted?
Probably
Montana
not.
State.
He's probably more of a priority free agent, but Jackson Slater is another.
Jackson Slater, we throw into the list.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Not really any defensive tackles that are popping out. What about edge? David Walker?
Oh, David Walker. Yes. David Walker might be the second one off that board after Gray Zabel. So, yes.
Who the hell's Elijah Ponder? Mock draft databases.
He's the freaky kid from Northern Colorado that like did some crazy testing.
How freaky are we talking?
Oh, dude, he did some stuff. He ran like 4.5 something and like a high 30s vert, I think. Like, yeah.
You got my joke.
What?
Never mind.
How freaky? Okay. All right.
No linebackers.
It's a draft show, man. It's a draft show. Yeah.
No. Yeah, if you can't tell, we're almost up, coming up to hour 2. No corners.
Marcus Yarns. Someone said Marcus Yarns.
Marcus Yarns. No, he doesn't count. He's a G5 guy because they were making the transition this year. So
that doesn't count. Oh, stop.
And there's no safe. Keandre Jackson's maybe a guy from
Keandre Jackson
State.
might be a late rounder. The safety out of
Wande Owens is a guy from UNH to pay attention to, but I don't know if he's going to get drafted.
Cal Poly is Ponder. My bad. I completely I forgot what school it was. He's a Big Sky kid though. Yeah, but he did some stuff, man.
Sam says to Marion Williams from Central Arkansas.
Wilson. He priority free agent. He's a bigger box safety, so he'll be in there for sure.
Okay, we got time for a few more questions before we end the stream.
Any Rhode Island kids? Any Rhode Island kids coming out this year, man?
Donato Crisanti. Dude, he is high. Okay, that's not even like me doing a bit. He is very high on a lot of teams' boards.
Oh my god.
He's very high on a lot of teams' boards.
Is he going to be a starting snapper in college football? Is he going to be?
I don't know if immediately, but I think that a lot of teams are going to bring him. Most guys don't start as rookies. It just doesn't happen. A lot of long snappers do not start as rookies, but he is the very rare 6'4" long snapper that you're going to find that moves pretty well. He tested well at his pro day.
Yeah. I can't believe you didn't bring him on this podcast with how much you talk about him. Like he should have been on this podcast.
Because I'm not. No, Donato, I love you, but no one's watching a damn long snapper interview. Nobody's watching a damn long snapper interview.
Oh, that is such a.
They listen to me talk enough. These people listen to me talk enough.
Personalities is a former specialist. What are we talking about?
Donato's not as interesting as Pat McAfee. No one wants to hear. I love Donato's going to get a really strong shot because he's a good football, not because he's an interesting interview.
Sam Teets made a good point. Will we be talking about Donato Crisanti or whatever the heck his name is?
Donato Crisanti, respect him.
if his name was not Italian, would you even be talking about it? If his name was Donato Smith, would he
Okay,
would he be a guy?
I coached Donato. That's why we're talking about him. I helped Donato when he was going from high school to college, and I have a close relationship with him. So that is why we're talking about him. But
Yeah.
from knowing his agent and knowing him and his agent, Donato is the same. How many long snappers can say that they're repped by the same agency as Travis Hunter? He like seriously, that doesn't happen.
Right, relax, man. Brian Govan, who is obviously a very respected person for me personally. Tyron Herring, we actually saw Herring, didn't we? He was the corner that got invited to the East West, right, at Delaware. Wasn't that the kid we saw? He was not explosive in person.
No.
That is my only thing, Brian. So priority free agent there. Mike Smith is interesting. He's the safety from Eastern Kentucky. I don't think he gets drafted, though. I think he's more of a priority free agent type. What's that one linebacker? I watched a linebacker in the preseason who I think he plays in an HBCU. I could be wrong about that, but I watched him, and he's
the
athletic.
Grambling kid. Didn't he transfer?
No, not the Grambling kid. You're talking about Andrew Jones. I'm not talking about the Grambling kid. Brian will know. He's in the chat. Who is that really athletic linebacker? I think he was an HBCU kid. He has athleticism for sure, but
the Jackson State kid?
No, man, no. Oh, gosh.
Ron asked a really potentially problematic question. Who's the best agent in the business?
I'm not answering that. Sorry.
Oh, you don't want to glaze anybody? You don't want to.
I don't want to.
You got a lot of agents that love you,
I'm in that
man.
world too much. I'm in that world too much. I do not want to.
Coward.
I do not want to. No.
We see this crap all the time where like sources and then per the agency where like Rappaport and Schefter now tag the agent who gave them the information. You can you're too afraid to put some names behind you.
There's some really good agents out there. Some really bad ones too. So I want to stay on the fence here, man. I do not want to go one way or the other. I'm sorry.
Ryan believes that all of them are bad.
So shout out Lindsey Crook. Lindsey Crook is maybe the best agent I know as far as the most honest and just good person of agents, which is a very rare thing. So yeah.
The last question that we had from Garrick Reagan, and then we're going to close out. Are the offensive tackles good enough in round 2 that they can afford to go tight end? Is that a Jets question? I'm assuming because he asked a Jets question earlier. That's why ultimately, if you need an offensive tackle, you better grab him at 7. Tyler Warren feels like a luxury pick. That is why I kind of agree with that belief that if you try to come back in the second round, you need one more offensive lineman. You're not going to find him in the second round. You're just not. You're not going to unless you get Chase Lunt and he develops quickly, or Charles Grant and he develops quickly. I'd rather take Elijah Arroyo in the second round than I would Tyler Warren. And I'd rather take an offensive lineman in the top 10 than I would rather take Tyler Warren in the top 10.
Here's how the best teams operate consistently. You take the player that you think is best. That's it. Like, I understand this whole need versus board conversation, and it's important. I'm not just dismissing it. I promise. But if you think that Tyler Warren is better than offensive tackle A that is on the board, you take Tyler Warren. Like that's ideal. Why have the Baltimore Ravens been such a good team, whether they were under Ozzie Newsome and where they are now with Eric DeCosta? You know why, Joe? Because they don't overthink it, man. They just take good players, right? Just take good players and then figure it out the rest of the way. That's my ideology. I understand, and there's certainly I don't know.
With that frame, that frame though, I have similar grades for Tyler Warren as I do Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell.
Well,
so
then maybe you would just take Kelvin Banks. Maybe you would take Kelvin Banks.
Exactly my point. Exactly my point.
But I do not have the same grade on Kelvin Banks as I do with Tyler Warren. I personally
You're too
do
high
not.
on Tyler Warren.
I love Tyler Warren, man. Tyler Warren's really good. He's really, really good.
Ryan, we survived the 2 hours.
What is your hang up with him? What is your hang up with Tyler Warren? I don't understand.
I like Tyler Warren. I don't see top 3 tight end in the NFL. I don't. I see like TJ Hawkinson, who's been really just a nice tight end, like a really reliable, good tight end for 2 different teams. I don't see Brock Bowers. And if Brock Bowers went at pick 13 in a class
I agree.
that last year that had a lot more offensive
But Joe,
weapons,
it's a different class.
Why am I taking?
Well,
take the defensive players. If you're pick 7, take one of these rare defensive players.
Aaron Smith Aaron Smith from South Carolina State was who I was thinking of. Thank you, Brian. I was
Okay.
literally looking through Blesto at the grades from last year because I couldn't remember his name. I couldn't. Yes. He's an interesting player, probably more of a priority free agent. Back to that conversation, Joe. If Brock Bowers was in this class this year, he would go top 5.
Yeah. No, actually, probably
Okay.
not. Because
Okay.
somebody would do.
Oh, bull,
wait.
Yes.
Forget that question.
Mhm.
Tyler Warren, Brock Bowers are on the board. Forget what pick
Right?
you're sitting at. Which one are you taking?
I'm taking Brock Bowers, but Brock Bowers isn't in this class. It's a different class. It's a different situation.
I can't get behind this. All right. Yeah, Sam's right. I would take a long snapper over Tyler Warren. I like Tyler Warren.
No, you don't. You do not like Tyler Warren. You had Colson Loveland above Tyler Warren for a very long time. You do not like Tyler Warren. You do not.
I let peer pressure push him into my number 2.
Well, that's your first fault. That's your first fault. Good scouts rely on their opinion and they don't get let outside noise. So you did 2 faults here, Joe. You did 2 faults. One, you don't like Tyler Warren. 2, you let the outside noise change your opinion on a player. We don't do that, man. We don't do it.
All right, we've come up on hour 2. We're going to close out. Everybody, this was awesome. We had some folks that I think stayed in the entire time. Shout out to those people. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like button. And also, please subscribe because tonight we're going to be releasing quick reactions and grades to as many of the first-round picks as we deem are worth reacting to. So if you want opinions on your team's pick, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. We'll be back. Our next live show is going to probably be next Wednesday, but TBD if we end up going a little bit sooner than that. Everybody, enjoy draft night.